Chapter 151. The life of Xiaoyan and little fairy doctor continued quietly, separated inside the small valley. One person dedicated himself to cultivating dou qi, and the other meticulously studied poison scriptures. The two parties did not disturb each other, and the tranquil life, on the contrary, created a sense of relaxed richness. Breaking through to the dou master stage was much more difficult than Xiaoyan had imagined. After nearly half a month of cultivation in the valley, although the dou qi in his body became more and more condensed and vigorous, the feeling of breakthrough remained slow to arrive. Regarding this matter, old Yao merely told him to wait with a peaceful heart, letting everything follow fate. Towards old Yao's intentional concealment and mysterious words, Xiaoyan could only show a helpless expression on his face. However, he gradually forgot about it later, as the time spent cultivating dou qi occupied almost his entire day. Occasionally, when he had time, he would practice a few dou techniques in the valley, not idle at all. Under old Yao's guidance, he could distinguish every strange medicinal herb in the valley. And under the attraction of the many rare medicinal herbs growing everywhere on the ground, the thought of learning alchemy suddenly stirred in Xiaoyan's mind. Therefore, a quarter of his time each day was set aside specifically for practicing the art of alchemy. Because he did not want to expose his identity as an alchemist, Xiaoyan chose a small cave position on the cliff inside the valley, about 6 or 7 meters from the ground. Every day at the hottest time, he would enter the cave and quietly refine all kinds of low-level elixirs. During the refining process, Xiaoyan noticed something strange. The pale yellow flame channeled from his body into the medicinal cauldron seemed to be much hotter than before. Upon Xiaoyan's careful observation, he realized that a faint purple flame seemed to be indistinctly flashing within the pale yellow flame rising from the cauldron. Staring blankly at the subtly appearing and disappearing purple flame, Xiaoyan's heart trembled strongly, and he quietly said in surprise, "This is the purple flame of the amethyst-winged Lion King. How did it escape from my body and rush out?" Opening his eyes wide in confusion, Xiaoyan frowned and muttered, "Could it be because of the amethyst origin associated with it?" Thinking of this, Xiaoyan slowly calmed down. The amethyst origin and the amethyst-winged Lion King have the same origin. That being the case, they must both contain special flames within. This was not a matter to be surprised about. Xiaoyan's guess was indeed correct. The amethyst origin, like the little amethyst-winged Lion King, existed inside the mother beast for many years. Under these prolonged circumstances, it naturally absorbed a little purple flame. And by a lucky coincidence, Xiaoyan had rashly consumed the amethyst origin, so when it was urged by the medicinal cauldron to transform into a flame, it naturally contained a small amount of purple flame. Although only a very small amount of purple flame was mixed in, its quality was much stronger than Xiaoyan's normal dou qi flame. The fact that he could obtain it could be considered a rather significant stroke of luck. As his sense of perception gradually extended into the medicinal cauldron, Xiaoyan slowly enveloped this small wisp of purple flame. He separated it from the abundant pale yellow flame. Looking at the solitary, vividly flickering wisp of purple flame on the medicinal cauldron, Xiaoyan excitedly licked his lips and continued to increase his soul perception, intending to control the speed of its heat increase. However, just as Xiaoyan was about to try to control it, the small purple flame emitted a resistance, as if by instinct. The control failed. Xiaoyan was stunned, then his eyebrows furrowed tightly. His gaze intensely focused on the small wisp of flame, his mind was even more concentrated, his sense of perception continuously strengthened, unceasingly probing the resistance emanating from the purple flame. Although the purple flame was a little wild and arrogant, Xiaoyan was not worried. No matter what, it was currently an unowned object. Xiaoyan was confident that he could slowly control it. Inside the medicinal cauldron, Xiaoyan and the flame were in a stalemate, neither willing to be the first to concede defeat. The standoff continued for a full 10 minutes. Just as Xiaoyan, with sweat covering his head, was about to lose the ability to maintain the stalemate, the soul power enveloping the purple flame suddenly trembled. Then, like a tide, it surged into the flame, quickly taking control of it. As the soul power poured into the purple flame, Xiaoyan's whole body suddenly trembled. This tremor seemed to emanate from the depths of his soul, and quickly permeated his entire body. Xiaoyan felt as if his soul was undergoing a moment of illusory sublimation. And all the pores on his body almost opened up instantly. That feeling was extremely mystical and refreshing. The intense pleasure made Xiaoyan tremble once more. Without knowing when, his closed eyes slowly opened again. A faint purple color flashed across his dark eyes before disappearing. Xiaoyan once again turned his gaze towards the medicinal cauldron. Due to the distraction of his sense of perception, the pale yellow flame inside had completely vanished. Only a very small wisp of purple flame was still flickering and shaking. Staring at the purple flame, Xiaoyan's mind moved slightly. An object flew quickly out of the cauldron's fire aperture and finally burrowed from his palm into his body. Slowly removing his hand from the medicinal cauldron, Xiaoyan let out a soft breath. He slowly clenched his right hand, then extended his middle finger and quietly said, "Appear." As soon as Xiaoyan's voice faded, his middle finger trembled. In the next instant, a very small wisp of purple flame actually emerged from his fingertip, finally burning slowly. "It's so hot." Substantial flame. With Xiaoyan's current strength as a first-grade alchemist, he could actually summon forth something that only a fourth-grade alchemist could conjure from their palm. Below a fourth-grade alchemist, one normally had to rely on the mutated fire aperture of a medicinal cauldron to convert the fire-attributed dou qi within the body into a substantial flame. But when reaching the fourth grade, an alchemist no longer needed the cauldron's step-by-step conversion but could directly summon forth a substantial flame. And when many alchemists reached this level and fought others, they basically directly summoned forth the true flame for attack. Because alchemists' soul attributes naturally contain both fire and wood, due to the wood attribute, the flames summoned by alchemists are far more scorching and powerful than those of a dou practitioner of the same rank. Therefore, the ability to summon true flame without relying on any external object is the key point in distinguishing whether one has advanced to a fourth grade alchemist. Of course, nothing is absolute. This is only the prerequisite for an ordinary alchemist. If someone is fortunate enough to refine a type of heavenly flame, even if they have not met the above condition to reach the fourth grade alchemist rank, they can still summon a true flame, and the flame they summon is even more bizarre and powerful than a genuine heavenly flame, after all. They hold within their hands the most destructive force in the world, the heavenly flame. Therefore, the heavenly flame is forever the supreme divine object that every alchemist aspires to. However, this wild, destructive power of the heavenly flame has also caused countless outstanding alchemists to perish within it, like moths drawn to a flame. Feeling a similar shock while looking at the very small purple flame on his fingertip, Xiaoyan finally took a breath of cold air after a moment, his voice slightly trembling with uncertainty. "Master, come out quickly and take a look." Old Yao's questioning voice came from the ring. After a moment of silence, a streak of light abruptly flashed out from the ring, finally hovering in front of Xiaoyan, his eyes staring blankly at the purple flame. "Heavenly flame? No, it's much weaker." "What is this?" "Ah, all right, the amethyst-winged lion king's purple flame." With a look of confusion and surprise, Old Yao strangely said, "It turns out that amethyst origin actually has such an effect, that it can form the amethyst-winged lion king's origin flame inside a person's body. Can this be considered a heavenly flame?" Xiaoyan asked hastily, his eyes burning as he stared at the purple flame that seemed ready to dissipate at any moment. "Ah. No, it's not." First stunned, Old Yao immediately shook his head and said, although this is also a strange flame, compared to a heavenly flame, it is much weaker. Perhaps calling it a beast flame is more appropriate. Shaking his head. Speechlessly, Xiaoyan said, regardless of whether it is considered a heavenly flame or a beast flame, I only want to ask, it should be stronger than the Douqi flame I summon with the medicinal cauldron, right? Yes, that point is undeniable. Then, can I be considered its owner now? Will it not backfire on me? Xiaoyan probed carefully again. This wisp of purple flame is too small. It's not enough to backfire on you. So, if I devour it, can my Fenju technique evolve? Taking a deep breath, Xiaoyan immediately asked. Ah. Stunned again, old Yao knitted his eyebrows, hesitated for a moment, then said with some uncertainty, perhaps it's possible. But even if it can evolve, it won't evolve to too high a level. After all, this purple flame is far from a true heavenly flame. Moreover, this purple flame is too small now. If you devour it now, I think it probably won't have any effect. Xiaoyan nodded slightly, his face a little worried. Although the Fenju technique was bizarre, its starting point was truly trash. Its ability to restore Douqi and its energy-holding effect were currently simply insufficient to satisfy Xiaoyan's use. He had to know that most of the Dou techniques Xiaoyan was proficient in were of the profound tier level, so every time he used a Dou technique, he had to hurriedly swallow a qi returning pill. Otherwise, with the recovery speed of a Huang tier level cultivation method, it would only leave him in an awkward situation with insufficient Dou qi. If the Fenju technique could evolve to the profound tier level, then the last time he went to the wolf head mercenary group, Xiaoyan would not have needed the little fairy doctor's help. He alone could have easily dealt with all the hundreds of people. That is the great difference between a profound tier cultivation method and a Huang tier cultivation method. Therefore, Xiaoyan was extremely anxious for his cultivation method to evolve quickly, but heavenly flames were not only rare but even if encountered, their destructive power would not allow Xiaoyan to devour them easily. Therefore, the appearance of the purple flame now was undoubtedly like finding a well in the desert, making Xiaoyan ecstatic. If you truly want to devour the purple flame to make Fenju evolve, there is actually a method. After pondering for a while, old Yao suddenly said. What? Hearing this, Xiaoyan's spirit lifted, and he quickly asked. Staring at the small wisp of purple flame, old Yao smiled. Refine it into a core fire seed. Slowly nurture its growth. When it reaches a sufficient level, use Fenju to devour it, and then achieve the greatest evolution. Core fire seed. Hearing old Yao's words, Xiaoyan was slightly stunned, then laughed bitterly. Why do I feel like you're talking about raising livestock at home, waiting for them to get fat, and then dragging them out to slaughter? Haha, that's exactly the principle. Smiling, old Yao nodded and said. Xiaoyan lowered his eyelids, his gaze fixed on the small purple flame rising on his fingertip. This was the only hope for him to evolve his cultivation method. Heavenly flames were truly too distant for him. And the purple flame formed from the amethyst origin was perfectly suited to his current condition and strength. How to refine it? Letting out a light breath, Xiaoyan raised his head and asked. Don't worry, this wisp of purple flame is originally an unowned object. So it won't generate much resistance against you. Refining it into a core fire seed won't pose too great a risk. Old Yao said with a smile, then stretched out his hand, lightly tapped Xiaoyan's head and said, Do as I say. Feeling a large amount of information rushing into his head, Xiaoyan carefully examined it. Then he nodded slightly, slowly closed his eyes, sat cross-legged in a cultivation posture, formed the cultivation hand seal, looked at his nose at his heart, and his mind slowly sank into his body. His mind roamed through the meridians inside his body, finally reaching the Douqi vortex in his lower abdomen. At this moment, the volume of the Dou Qi vortex was much smaller than before. However, although the volume was smaller, upon closer inspection, one could find that the Dou Qi contained within the vortex was becoming increasingly vigorous and condensed. His mind circled the Dou Qi vortex once. Currently, he did not discover any problems, so Xiaoyan began to act according to Old Yao's instructions. His mind wrapped around the Dou Qi vortex, then slowly entered it. At the same time, Xiaoyan's soul sense tightly coordinated, just as he had controlled the purple flame before. As Xiaoyan's mind carefully swept through the Dou Qi vortex, a small purple energy stream finally faintly appeared after a moment. As soon as the purple energy appeared, Xiaoyan quickly controlled his mind and enveloped it like a flash of lightning. Open a small empty space within the Dou Qi vortex to store the purple fire. Recalling Old Yao's words, Xiaoyan's soul sense quickly enveloped the entire Dou Qi vortex. After a period of silence, the soul sense abruptly urged the vortex to spin at high speed. Following the high-speed rotation of the vortex, the Dou Qi flowing through the meridians also began to circulate rapidly. However, Xiaoyan was not idle paying attention to it at this moment. His mind was entirely focused on the high-speed spinning vortex, which currently had an empty region at its center. Seeing that this method was indeed effective, Xiaoyan's soul sense enveloping the vortex gradually increased. As the soul sense increased, the rotation speed of the vortex also became faster and faster. In the end, the pale yellow vortex was almost invisible due to its rotational trajectory. A faint, invisible whistling sound constantly echoed outside the vortex. His mind intensely observed the empty region at the center of the vortex, which was constantly expanding. When the small area was about the size of a fist, Xiaoyan finally breathed a sigh of relief, slowly withdrawing his soul sense from the vortex. As the soul sense withdrew from the vortex, the rotation speed of the vortex gradually weakened. The motionless region at the center of the vortex, due to the decrease in Xiaoyan's mental control, formed a peculiar balance with the outside world, and it surprisingly did not disappear as the vortex's speed weakened. Seeing the motionless region not dissipate, Xiaoyan also sighed in relief in his heart. His mind slowly enveloped the small purple energy stream. It passed through the surrounding Dou Qi blockade and finally burrowed into the small motionless region. As soon as the purple energy stream entered the motionless region, Xiaoyan was so nervous that even the vortex strongly trembled. He quickly urged his soul sense again to consolidate the vortex. With the maintenance of his sense of perception, the vortex finally slowly stabilized. Moreover, as the vortex's Dou Qi came into contact with the motionless region at the center, Xiaoyan discovered that bursts of fire-attributed Dou Qi were continuously rushing out from the vortex and pouring into the purple energy stream inside the motionless region. His mind nervously watched the purple energy stream. As more and more fire-attributed Dou Qi was poured into it, the purple energy stream suddenly made a slight noise. After a moment, under Xiaoyan's mental observation, it began to undergo a metamorphosis, shedding its shell. The color of the purple energy stream was seen to become increasingly deep. When the color reached a profound state, the purple energy stream trembled for a moment. Then, a faint flame surprisingly emerged from within the purple energy stream. In an instant, the purple energy stream was completely transformed into a very small wisp of purple flame. Inside the dark motionless region, the purple flame flickered alone, and a faint warm sensation emanated from it, finally entering the Dou Qi vortex. As the faint heat infiltrated the Dou Qi vortex, Xiaoyan could notice that the vortex's rotation speed had surprisingly increased on its own. Upon this phenomenon, Xiaoyan was first stunned, then a wave of ecstatic joy rushed into his heart. The vortex could automatically spin faster, meaning that in the future, Xiaoyan would not need to deliberately control it, and the Dou Qi in the world would continuously pour into his body, allowing him to be immersed in the Dou Qi baptism almost constantly. The benefits this brought to his cultivation were undoubtedly immense. When the purple flame appeared in the motionless region, it seemed to be the activation of a large machine cycle, which then began to operate slowly. The purple flame needed to absorb the fire-attributed Dou Qi from the vortex to develop itself, and the warmth it emitted in turn increased the speed at which the vortex absorbed Dou Qi. This meticulous cooperation brought numerous benefits to both the purple flame and the vortex. His mind carefully observed the vortex again. After confirming that there were no problems, Xiaoyan slowly withdrew. Inside, Xiaoyan slowly opened his eyes. In his dark eyes, a purple flame suddenly flashed and then gradually disappeared. His eyes once again returned to their deep, dark appearance. How is it? Successful. Looking at Xiaoyan opening his eyes, old Yao, who had been waiting there for a long time, asked with a smile. Yes, it has been refined into a core fire seed. Xiaoyan nodded. He spread out his palm, and his fingers lightly rubbed together. With a crisp, soft sound, a very small wisp of purple flame flared up from Xiaoyan's fingertip, finally burning slowly. With curious eyes, Xiaoyan enjoyed his newly acquired purple flame for a moment. Then, his finger gently tapped towards the cliff. Immediately, the stone cliff was scorched into a black patch. This thing, compared to Master's bone-chilling flame, seems to be much weaker, Looking at the trace left by the purple flame, Xiaoyan smiled bitterly. Nonsense. My bone-chilling flame is a genuine heavenly flame, and it ranks 11th on the heavenly flame ranking. If you think this piece of trash can casually compare to it, what was the point of me risking my life back then, almost being burned to ashes, just to find it? Hearing this, old Yao immediately became proud and scolded with a laugh. Xiaoyan shook his head helplessly. These words were truly discouraging. The thing he worked extremely hard for, and was lucky enough to obtain, was directly called trash by the old man. All right, don't be discouraged. Your purple fire is currently in its nascent stage. How much power can it have? Wait until you nurture it later, it definitely won't be weak. Didn't you see the power of the amethyst-winged lion King's purple fire attack that day? Even the woman named Yunji, a Dou king, didn't dare to easily block it. From this, you can see it's not like that. Seeing Xiaoyan's sullen face, old Yao smiled and comforted him. Sighing, Xiaoyan nodded and said with a bitter smile, to nurture the purple fire to the same intensity as the amethyst-winged lion king's, I reckon it will be difficult without several decades. Speaking conventionally, that is indeed the case. Old Yao nodded slightly. Seeing Xiaoyan's listless expression, he couldn't help but say helplessly. But don't you have the amethyst origin? That thing is the best choice for urging and transforming the purple fire. As long as you can endure the pain it brings, the purple fire will grow at an extremely fast rate. Amethyst origin. Hearing this, Xiaoyan was stunned for a moment, then his face suddenly lit up with ecstasy. He hastily fumbled and pulled out a small jade bottle from his ring. As he opened the lid, a strange, cool fragrance wafted out. Taking a deep breath filled with the rich fire-attributed scent, Xiaoyan suddenly discovered that the purple flame on his fingertip had surprisingly risen much higher due to the fragrance. Good. Such dense fire attribute. Feeling the movement of the purple fire, Xiaoyan couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. The best option for cultivation from now on is directly under the sun. Also, don't use too much amethyst origin. If you recall the pain from last time, you might as well pretend I didn't say anything. Old Yao said teasingly. Recalling the burning pain from last time, a chill suddenly ran down Xiaoyan's spine. He didn't want to try that taste a second time. With your current strength after cultivating, just dip a little with your finger, and then put it in your mouth. If you use too much, you might burn yourself alive again. Old Yao warned solemnly. Yes. Xiaoyan nodded hurriedly. He didn't dare to joke about this kind of thing again. Having experienced that kind of pain once was enough. Using amethyst origin to quickly develop the purple fire. How long will it take before I can devour it? Xiaoyan clenched the jade bottle in his hand, raised his head, and said with a bitter smile, "Several years. If I had that time, I might as well go. Look for a heavenly flame, forget about this. With the amethyst origin, it won't take that long. Besides, the purple fire in your body hasn't reached the level of the amethyst-winged lion king. With your current strength, if you really nurture the purple fire to that state, you'll probably be burned to ashes by the purple fire immediately. If you don't have enough strength, playing with fire will result in burning yourself." Old Yao shook his head and pondered, "Perhaps, in a month, you should be able to use Fenju to try devouring the purple fire." 1 month. Xiaoyan smacked his lips and softly muttered the phrase, then nodded heavily. "Good. 1 month from now, I will devour the purple fire and evolve the cultivation method. Putting everything away." Xiaoyan climbed out of the cave. It was noon now, and the scorching sun shone down, heating the cliff face until it was blazing hot. Jumping down from the cave, after walking a few steps, he happened to meet the little fairy doctor returning with a basket of flowers, having just finished gathering herbs. She had a light blue scarf tied around her head at this moment, looking like an ordinary beautiful village girl. Xiaoyan couldn't help but feel a little amused. He shook his head and greeted her with a smile. Looking at Xiaoyan, the little fairy doctor also smiled warmly at him. Her eyes glanced over the cave on the cliff. However, being intelligent, she did not ask about it. Everyone has their own secrets, including herself. Therefore, she did not overly probe into what Xiaoyan was doing in the cave, pretending not to see anything. Xiaoyan was inwardly delighted by her gesture, even if he didn't say anything out loud. "Are you hungry? I've prepared lunch." Slowly walking with Xiaoyan outside the straw hut, the little fairy doctor turned her head and smiled charmingly at Xiaoyan. Then she squatted down, rolled up her sleeves, lit a fire on the stone stove, and began preparing the hunted food. Stone stove, composed of 3 triangularly placed stones for cooking. Sitting on a rock nearby, Xiaoyan watched the busy little fairy doctor softly humming a tune. He couldn't help but smile faintly. In terms of cooking, she was truly a skillful woman. Of course, Xiaoyan also did not forget that this beautiful woman with hands as fair as jade was pure in the kitchen, but when using poison, she was equally extremely subtle and bizarre. The profession of a poison master does not have a good reputation on the Dou-Chi continent. Many people are somewhat fearful when interacting with a poison master because they can secretly employ poisoning methods that make any opponent, or even friend, feel uneasy eating or sleeping. Likewise, if Xiaoyan didn't have Old Yao, an alchemist of the Grandmaster level, protecting him nearby, he wouldn't have the courage to eat anything the little fairy doctor made. After all, when traveling alone, being a little more cautious is important. No matter what, he only has one life. Perhaps it was precisely because Xiaoyan accepted all the food prepared by the little fairy doctor without any refusal that, after more than half a month of cohabitation, the little fairy doctor's attitude towards Xiaoyan had become increasingly friendly, even increasingly gentle. Of course, this gentleness was definitely not romantic affection that Xiaoyan could directly perceive. The little fairy doctor simply regarded him as a close male friend. With the slightly sensitive heart of a young woman, what she truly needed was not much, just a little trust could bring a beautiful smile to her face. Unfortunately, her profession dictated that she would rarely find such things. Regarding this, Xiaoyan also felt a bit ashamed in his heart. If it weren't for Old Yao's help, it would truly have been difficult for him to find a point of friendship with her. Sitting on the rock, Xiaoyan looked at the beautiful figure busy preparing lunch for the two of them. He let out a light breath, then suddenly spoke after a moment. "When are you planning to leave this place?" "Huh?" Hearing Xiaoyan ask this question, the little fairy doctor turned her head. Her jade hand lightly brushed aside a few strands of hair. Her beautiful eyes looked at Xiaoyan with confusion, and she quietly said, "What's wrong? Don't misunderstand. This is your place. I wouldn't dare to chase you away." Waving his hand, Xiaoyan first joked a little and then said, "Due to some circumstances, I might have to stay here for another half a month to a month, who knows? I thought, if you have any urgent matters, you might. It's fine. Stay as long as you like. I actually don't have any urgent matters, I just want to take some time to travel around the Dochi continent. But this is not pressing. And I'm not short on time." Breathing a sigh of relief in her heart, the little fairy doctor turned back and smiled casually. "Traveling the continent. That's not a bad idea." Xiaoyan nodded with some emotion. Traveling the continent, exploring and seeking treasures, that was also a dream in his heart. "Are you interested too? We can go together, Adding fuel to the fire, the little fairy doctor said with a prolonged laugh. I still have some things that I need to complete, so I won't have the time to spare in the short term." Xiaoyan shook his head and said, with a smile, "Then that's truly regrettable. It was so hard to find a friend with the same interests as you." Shaking her head with a little regret, the little fairy doctor said helplessly, "As a friend, I'll advise you on your travels. Try to conceal your identity as a poison master as much as possible. Otherwise, you'll be very lonely on the road." After a long silence, Xiaoyan suddenly spoke earnestly. Her soft body stiffened slightly. The little fairy doctor took a few non-poisonous mushrooms from her flower basket and put them into the pot. Then, staring at the mushrooms floating in the pot, she sighed softly. She also understood that her profession would attract a lot of people's aversion. Actually, you are not yet considered a poison master, you can travel under the identity of a doctor. At least doctors easily earn some people's respect." Seeing the little fairy doctor's silent appearance, Xiaoyan couldn't help but give a strained laugh. "I will become a poison master sooner or later, and perhaps I will be the kind that people hate the most." The little fairy doctor sighed inwardly and suddenly said softly, "Whether or not you ultimately become a poison master is entirely up to you, This matter, at least, no one is forcing you, right?" Hearing this, Xiaoyan said with some confusion, "Sigh, you won't understand." Lowering her hair to obscure her face, the little fairy doctor mumbled, "If we meet again in the future, I hope you can still treat me as a friend." Without understanding why, Xiaoyan's mind was clouded in mist by the little fairy doctor's vague words. All right." Shaking her head slightly, the little fairy doctor looked at the small, bubbling pot. She suddenly smiled and extended her jade hand to pick up a small bowl from the side. Then she scooped up another bowl of mushroom soup and carefully presented it to Xiaoyan. Reaching out to take it, Xiaoyan sniffed the rising fragrant aroma. He couldn't help but let his mouth water uncontrollably. Swallowing a mouthful of saliva, he gave the little fairy doctor a thumbs up. Then, disregarding the hot soup, he drank it all in one go. Watching Xiaoyan pick up the bowl of mushroom soup and drink it all without the slightest hesitation, the little fairy doctor smiled faintly. She truly liked this trust from Xiaoyan. Squatting on the rock, Xiaoyan drank several bowls of mushroom soup in quick succession. Only then did he return the bowl to the little fairy doctor in satisfaction. Patting his slightly round belly, he squinted his eyes and said with a smile, "Great skill. Whoever marries you will truly have a blessed palate. Marry me." Hearing Xiaoyan's words, the little fairy doctor couldn't help but smile, covering her mouth as she laughed, "But you should know that the marriage rate for the poison master profession on the Dochi continent is the lowest. Because there aren't many people brave enough to share a bed with a wife who can release deadly poison in the midst of an embrace." shaking his head helplessly. Xiaoyan felt that the little fairy doctor was truly a bit pessimistic. Although poison masters were indeed somewhat feared. But was it too early for her to think about that situation with her current strength? The level required to make others tremble with fear at her name, hating to be within 100,000 miles of her, was that of a Grandmaster-level poison master. And not everyone could become one. Remember, if we meet again on the Dochi continent in the future, you must not detest me. Otherwise, I think I'll be very sad. Gathering the bowls and pot, the little fairy doctor walked towards the straw hut. Just as she was about to enter, she paused slightly, suddenly turned around and smiled at Xiaoyan. Having said that, she slipped into the straw hut, leaving a cloud of mist in Xiaoyan's mind. Staring blankly at the straw hut for a long time, Xiaoyan gave a helpless smile. So what if she becomes a poison master in the future? Could he really detest her just because of this identity when they meet again? Sitting on the rock lost in thought for a long time, Xiaoyan tiredly stood up, walked to a spot below the cliff, raised his head to look up at the scorching sky, and his ankle moved slightly. Then his foot suddenly stamped on the ground. With a sharp energy boom, Xiaoyan's body shot straight up the cliff like a cannonball. Just as his momentum ran out, his foot stamped hard on the cliff again. Amidst the booming sounds, Xiaoyan's body continuously darted straight up along the cliff. After 5 loud explosions, Xiaoyan's body momentarily hung in the air, his feet steadily landing on the peak of the mountain above the valley. From here, the straw hut below in the valley looked no bigger than half a fist. Since it was high noon, the scorching sun in the sky released its hot sunlight without reserve. The bare rock surface, after a period of exposure, was almost too hot for people to dare to touch. Xiaoyan landed on the ground, which was a protruding rocky platform. In this spot, one could perfectly enjoy the sensation of a scorching sunbath. Reaching out to wipe the sweat from his forehead, Xiaoyan shook his head with a bitter smile, secretly sighing that cultivation was truly tough. He sat down on the blazing hot rock platform, and instantly, a burning sensation spread from his buttocks, causing Xiaoyan to grimace. Sitting cross-legged, Xiaoyan no longer paid attention to the sweat continuously pouring down his face. He formed the cultivation hand seal, then slowly stabilized his mind. As soon as he was ready in the cultivation state, Xiaoyan discovered that the surrounding fire-attributed energy began to crowd towards his body. His mind skillfully guided the energy flow through the meridians to be refined, finally pouring it into the vortex. And as the vortex completed one rotation, it was immediately injected into the position of the purple flame at the center of the vortex. Receiving the fire-attributed do qi that carried a faint scent of the scorching sun, the purple flame immediately flared up. After devouring it, the small purple flame seemed to have grown a little. Under the intense mental observation, every subtle growth of the purple flame was captured by Xiaoyan's eyes. Seeing that the cultivation effect was not bad, his heart was a mix of joy and apprehension. After absorbing the external energy for another while, Xiaoyan slowly opened his eyes. Then he took out the small jade bottle containing the amethyst origin from his ring. He carefully dipped his finger in a tiny bit, and put it into his mouth. His tongue quickly recoiled, and then he swallowed it down with saliva. As soon as he swallowed the amethyst origin, Xiaoyan's complexion suddenly turned red. His normally pale skin also began to turn slightly red. Noticing the change in his body, Xiaoyan hurriedly stabilized his mind again, frantically circulating the do qi within his body, beginning to dissolve the hot, fierce, and overbearing energy stream. On the rocky mountain, under the scorching sun, the young man, drenched in sweat, clenched his teeth, enduring the searing test within his body, like a silkworm agonizingly breaking out of its cocoon to transform into a butterfly. After the pain came the metamorphosis and revival. It was just that the metamorphosis process was filled with agonizing trials. In the quiet valley, time slowly passed day by day. Half a month had passed since Xiaoyan last refined the purple flame. During this half-month, Xiaoyan had almost completely abandoned the cultivation of Dou Qi. All the energy he absorbed into his body was entirely poured into the purple flame in the motionless region. And under this continuous frenzied urging, the results Xiaoyan achieved were also extremely significant. The purple fire that was initially only the size of a little finger had now grown dozens of times larger in volume. Every time he closely observed the gradually growing purple fire, a powerful sense of satisfaction surged into Xiaoyan's heart. Based on this progress, in at most another half a month, the purple fire would be able to reach the energy limit needed to help him evolve his cultivation method. Cultivating under the scorching sun. Sitting cross-legged on the rocky mountain, Xiaoyan's clothes were completely soaked with sweat. After cultivating for nearly 2 hours under the fierce sun, Xiaoyan finally woke up from the cultivation state when the heat of the scorching sun in the sky slowly subsided. He looked down at his damp clothes and couldn't help but shake his head helplessly. Stretching his body, Xiaoyan mentally checked his body and discovered that the purple flame had grown another tiny bit. Standing up, he lightly jumped down. After half a month of sun exposure, Xiaoyan's skin had become a little darker, and his handsome face also showed a hint of firmness and maturity due to the continuous intense cultivation. After his somewhat numb legs had fully regained their flexibility, Xiaoyan spread out his palm, and his finger lightly flicked. With a faint soft sound, a large wisp of purple flame fiercely surged up from Xiaoyan's palm, instantly completely enveloping his hand in the purple flame. After half a month of cultivation, the originally very small purple flame could now completely cover Xiaoyan's hand. Looking at his hand enveloped in the purple flame, Xiaoyan grinned. He slowly clenched his hand, then suddenly threw a punch. Instantly, a wave of intense heat scorched the space in front of him until it was somewhat twisted and blurred. TSK, if this hit a person's body, I'm afraid the effect would be quite good. The purple flame on his palm slowly flickered casually, and Xiaoyan said softly with squinted eyes. After playing with the purple fire on the rocky mountain for a while longer, Xiaoyan finally satisfiedly retracted it into his body. His body trembled slightly, and the purple cloud wings immediately shot out from his back. Turning his head to look at the pair of purple-black wings, Xiaoyan smiled and directly leaped towards the valley. The fierce wind roared past his ears. When he was still more than 20 meters from the ground, Xiaoyan's wings fluttered slightly, urgently folding his body. His speed immediately slowed down. His palm was exposed and aimed at the ground, and a powerful repulsive force surged out, surprisingly sending Xiaoyan's body rebounding a distance into the air. Relying on this force, Xiaoyan's body momentarily hovered in the air, and the purple cloud wings on his back swooshed and transformed into a tattoo that adhered to Xiaoyan's back. His feet landed steadily on the ground. Xiaoyan's body trembled slightly, completely dissipating all the force. After a moment, he stood straight up and walked with a squinted smile towards the straw hut in the valley. Slowly approaching the straw hut, Xiaoyan frowned. Normally at this time, the little fairy doctor should have returned from gathering herbs, right? But why was it still so quiet today? A hint of doubt flashed in his heart. Xiaoyan slowly walked to the front of the straw hut and gently knocked on the door, but there was no movement inside. He knocked heavily a few more times, but the result was still the same. His eyebrows furrowed tightly. A sense of unease flashed in Xiaoyan's heart. He hesitated behind the door for a long time, then suddenly gritted his teeth, and viciously kicked the wooden door, instantly kicking it flying. Violently kicking the wooden door open, Xiaoyan rushed in hastily. A layer of smoke floating in the room made him cough violently. He quickly raised his right palm, and a fierce burst of force shot out from his palm, instantly blowing the smoke out of the straw hut. As the smoke in the room slowly dissipated, he saw the little fairy doctor lying on the bed with her eyes tightly shut. Her originally rosy face was now covered in a very strange seven-colored hue. Seeing the little fairy doctor's appearance, as if she wasn't breathing, Xiaoyan's face paled. A streak of light quickly shot out from the black ring on his finger, and old Yao abruptly shouted, "Stop!" As old Yao's shout faded, Xiaoyan suddenly stood frozen in place as if struck by lightning. A moment later, he recovered from the deafening shout, looking at old Yao with confusion, his expression full of astonishment. "If you want to die, just touch her." Old Yao's face was slightly solemn as he stared at the seven-colored hue on the little fairy doctor's face, and he spoke in a deep voice. "What's wrong?" Seeing old Yao reveal such an expression for the first time, Xiaoyan was also greatly startled. His gaze swept towards the little fairy doctor again, and he asked worriedly. Old Yao didn't answer immediately. His figure hovered and circled the unconscious little fairy doctor a few times. After a moment, he shook his head and sighed softly, "It's really as I thought." Seeing old Yao's sinking expression, Xiaoyan's heart tightened slightly, and he carefully asked, "What exactly is wrong with her?" "Look at her hand." Old Yao pointed towards the little fairy doctor's slightly open jade hand. Hearing this, Xiaoyan hurriedly moved his gaze to the little fairy doctor's palm. In her palm, he seemed to see a bag of black medicinal powder. Blinking his eyes in confusion, Xiaoyan moved closer, a few meters from her hand, and sniffed the scent of the medicinal powder a few times. Instantly, his head felt suddenly dizzy, and his stomach churned. He sat down on the ground and vomited for a long time. His face pale, he stood up and said in horror, "What a potent poison! I'm afraid even a Dou master would be poisoned to death if he wasn't careful with this stuff, right? Even I have to admit that this little girl's talent for refining this poison is indeed extraordinary, ah." Old Yao nodded slightly, his tone containing a hint of something that was neither admiration nor interest. Xiaoyan nodded with a bitter smile. He also felt that the little fairy doctor seemed to have a natural ability to manipulate poisons. Perhaps, calling her the little poison fairy was more appropriate. Look again, at the corner of her mouth. Floating in the straw hut, old Yao reminded him again. Xiaoyan's gaze moved from the little fairy doctor's hand, finally resting on her seductive, red lips. Xiaoyan's pupils contracted. He saw that on her rosy lips, there was surprisingly still a little black powder residue. Judging by the color and scent, it was clearly the same extremely potent black poison that the little fairy doctor held in her hand. Did she commit suicide by taking poison? How can this be? Why would she commit suicide for no reason? Staring blankly at the black residue, Xiaoyan's mind was completely muddled, and he muttered, "Who said she committed suicide? Have you ever seen a dead person who can still look this beautiful?" Old Yao rolled his eyes and pouted. Her body's strength is only at the one-star Dou practitioner level, ah. How can she withstand an extremely potent poison that would even kill a Dou master? Xiaoyan wanted to go check the little fairy doctor's breathing, but old Yao had just sharply shouted, so he could only anxiously pace around the room. If it were an ordinary person, she should indeed be dead, but old Yao's eyes stared at the little fairy doctor's elegant sleeping posture on the bed, and he quietly said, "But she is not." "What do you mean?" Stopping his pacing, Xiaoyan asked in surprise, "What is different about her? Is it because of her identity as a poison master? Being a poison master and dying from the poison one refines is not unheard of, is it? They are not immune to all poisons." "That's right. No matter how brilliant a poison master is, they can still be poisoned to death by their own poisons." Old Yao nodded and said in a deep voice, "But everything has exceptions. On the Dou Qi continent, there is an extremely special physical constitution. This constitution is known as the innate poison body or calamity poison body. Because the appearance of this poison body basically brings about disaster. Innate poison body. Calamity poison body. The unfamiliar terms left Xiaoyan's head covered in confusion. You've been in Wuten City all year. So naturally you don't know some of the secrets of the Doqi continent. Back when I still had a physical body, a woman with the calamity poison body once appeared on the Doqi continent. This woman, in a fit of rage, once turned the life of an empire into 1,000 miles of poisonous wasteland. In that poisonous land, there were tens of thousands, perhaps even more, wandering spirits. Hiss. Hearing this, Xiaoyan took a sharp breath. That woman was too ruthless, wasn't she? Tens of thousands of lives, just like that, were wiped out without any compassion. Was she killing chickens? You should know that on the Doqi continent, the powerful have their own rules. What that woman did was undoubtedly violate this invisible rule. After all, there were many powerful individuals in that empire at the time, so when such a thing happened, one powerful person after another went to seek revenge on that woman. But one after another, they all fell. All right. The lowest level of these powerhouses was at least a Dou spirit, and the highest, there was even one who was about to advance to the Dou sect level, a 9-star Dou king. Old Yao threw up his hands as he spoke and said, unfortunately, all of them died at the hands of that woman. Gulp. Swallowing with difficulty, Xiaoyan wiped his cold sweat. That woman was too ferocious, wasn't she? Truly killing people like killing chickens, ah. The commotion finally led to the appearance of a reclusive old monster. After an earth-shattering battle unknown to outsiders, that woman, whose strength was only a 5-star Dou king, was severely injured and fled. And the old monster, a super powerhouse at the Dou sect level, took 10 years to completely expel the toxins and fully recover. Awesome. Xiaoyan's throat constricted. Daring to contend with a Dou sect powerhouse at the level of a Dou king, and seemingly leaving a deep impression on the opponent. Xiaoyan could only use these 2 words to describe such a person. More than 20 years after that woman fled, she reappeared again. But by then, she had also advanced to the Dou sect level. And at this time, the old monster, having suffered once, did not dare to casually judge, so he could only feign ignorance of her whereabouts. 20 years. From a 7-star Dou king to a Dou sect, that speed is considered abnormal, right? Shaking his head, Xiaoyan said. That woman was indeed a person of dazzling talent. Old Yao nodded, his gaze shifting to the little fairy doctor on the bed, and he quietly said, afterward, while I was fighting for a spiritual herb with that woman, a conflict occurred, and finally, we fought. Xiaoyan's pupils slowly widened. This was the first time he had vaguely heard old Yao reveal details of his past achievements. He immediately asked hastily, what was the result? The result? Old Yao smiled faintly, raised his head, and a hint of nostalgic emotion appeared in his cloudy eyes. After a long moment, he smiled calmly and said, the result was that I was considered to have won by 1 level against her. Taking a deep breath, Xiaoyan was filled with shock. 1 by 1 level against her. Although old Yao said it very simply, Xiaoyan could still feel the weight of it. He had to know that that woman, at the Dou king level, dared to fight against a Dou sect powerhouse, and when she fought with old Yao, her physical strength had already reached the Dou sect level. Yet the result was that she was still 1 level lower than old Yao. It seemed that old Yao back then must have been a peak powerhouse at the top of the Doqi continent, which was not an exaggeration. Seeing Xiaoyan's shocked expression, old Yao couldn't help but laugh and scold. What is there to be shocked about? You too can achieve this success in the future. Is that possible? Shrugging his shoulders, Xiaoyan didn't really care. That level was not something that could be reached just by relying on talent. Opportunities and luck were all essential. Right now, he was only thinking about quickly nurturing the purple flame, then devouring it to evolve his cultivation method, so that he could quickly become a Dou master. As for Dou King, Dou Sect, just the name of these super-level ranks was enough to make Xiaoyan breathless. He truly didn't dare to aim too high. According to Master's meaning, little fairy doctor, is she also a calamity? Poison body or something similar? Xiaoyan's gaze swept over the bed again, looking at the seven-colored hue on the little fairy doctor's face, and he probed. Old Yao nodded gently. The smile on his aged face slowly retracted. He stared at the little fairy doctor for a long time, then softly sighed. I once fought with that woman, so the impression of this calamity poison body is profound. This type of poison body's cultivation method is quite peculiar. They don't need to cultivate Dou Qi for many years. If they want to become stronger, they only need to. Speaking of this, old Yao's eyes shifted towards the medicinal powder residue remaining at the corner of the little fairy doctor's mouth, and his expression was slightly strange. Eat poison. Following old Yao's gaze, Xiaoyan was first stunned, but then his face quickly changed, and he said in horror. Yes, that's right. It is eating poison. As long as they eat poison, their bodies will use a strange method to transform the toxic power contained in the poison into a very special poison Dou Qi. Old Yao exclaimed in surprise, the more potent the poison, the more beneficial it is for the increase of their strength. Therefore, they don't need intense cultivation. As long as they continuously eat poison, their strength increases very quickly. Truly an abnormal constitution, ah. Xiaoyan sighed softly and said with a bitter smile. Of course, nothing in the world is absolutely perfect. Although the calamity poison body can quickly increase its strength by eating poison, poison is poison after all. Even though they can continuously devour poison by relying on the calamity poison body. However, the more poison they eat, later on, the more the poison Dou Qi in their body will continuously suppress the calamity poison body. At that time, the pain of 10,000 poisons gnawing at the body will torment them in the most agonizing way, and then they will slowly die. Old Yao shook his head and sighed. Recalling this kind of agonizing pain, Xiaoyan's body trembled slightly. He looked at the little fairy doctor, who resembled a sleeping beauty, with a touch of sympathy, and said mournfully, is there no solution? To quickly gain power, one naturally has to pay a price. In this world, nothing is gained without effort. Old Yao said calmly. Then if we make her give up relying on using poison to increase her strength, would she be able to avoid this outcome? Xiaoyan rolled his eyes and asked. Theoretically speaking, that is indeed possible. Nodding. Seeing Xiaoyan's joyful expression, old Yao sighed, unfortunately. You must know that for a person with the calamity poison body, the stronger the poison, the greater its allure to them. They might even resort to killing and robbery for potent poison. In their eyes, potent poison is like the allure of heavenly flame to alchemists. They try 100 ways, 1,000 schemes, and in the end, they rush towards it like a moth to a flame, without the slightest hesitation. You want her to give up using poison. Do you think that's possible? If she had never eaten poison, the calamity poison body would not have been activated. Only when poison is used, even if by mistake, the calamity poison body will truly be activated. After activation, the situation I mentioned earlier will occur, and there is no chance of reversing it. In short, we discovered this too late. Otherwise, old Yao sighed regretfully. Xiaoyan's mouth slightly opened, his expression constantly shifting. After a long moment, he weakly slumped down, his spirit dejected. According to old Yao's words, this potent poison seemed to be like opium with an irresistible attraction to an addict. Wanting her to give it up seemed to be a near impossibility. Currently, her calamity poison body is still only in the initial stage, so when she is conscious, your contact with her body is fine. But when she falls into a coma, or when the poison body becomes more mature later on, then whatever she touches dies. Xiao Yan's mouth twitched slightly. He finally understood why the little fairy doctor had said those strange words earlier. It seemed she already knew about her strange calamity poison body. Right? But how did she know? She has been in this remote small town. How could she know about this secret term that even in the Jiama Empire, not many people are aware of? Xiao Yan muttered in confusion. Old Yao pondered briefly, then his gaze shifted to the seven-colored book on the little fairy doctor's chest. His eyes narrowed, and with a wave of his hand, he drew it into his grasp. He slowly opened it. His eyes moved past the various poisons and refining methods, and then stopped at the end of the book. Immediately, he shook his head helplessly and handed it to Xiao Yan. Reaching out to take the seven-colored book, Xiao Yan's eyes scanned it, and he too wore a bitter smile. Calamity poison body, a peculiar poison body that can rapidly increase strength by devouring poison. The method for distinguishing the calamity poison body is a very small, seven-colored latent thread appearing in the lower abdomen. The seven-colored line, which contains poison, will grow along the body. When the seven-colored line extends to the heart, it is the moment when the calamity poison body is strongest, and at the same time, it will be tormented by the pain of 10,000 poisons gnawing at the body. The small words written below clearly detailed the method by which the calamity poison body caused harm, including everything old Yao had mentioned earlier. So she already knew that by continuing this way, she would eventually become a body carrying potent poison. Raising the seven-colored book, Xiao Yan said with a bitter smile. Yes. Xiao Yan nodded with a sigh. He returned the scroll to old Yao. Staring at the little fairy doctor, he quietly said, "Isn't the calamity poison body immune to all poisons? What is wrong with her now? The poison is too potent, she's only temporarily unconscious. She should wake up very soon." Old Yao said casually. Oh. Xiao Yan nodded slightly. He sat down at a small table nearby, waiting for the little fairy doctor to wake up. Old Yao, after giving another reminder, returned inside the ring. Sitting by the table, Xiao Yan looked at the unconscious little fairy doctor and sighed, shaking his head. Her original wish was to become an alchemist. Unfortunately, due to her innate attributes, she had to give up becoming a doctor. Based on the development of her constitution, in the future, she would likely become a grandmaster-level great poison master, feared and dreaded by countless people on the continent. When she reached that state, perhaps it would indeed be as she said that day. No one would dare to approach her anymore, let alone talk intimately as friends. Her original intention was to become a doctor to save lives and heal injuries. But it seemed fate did not wish it, causing a kind-hearted woman to be born with the calamity poison body. Sigh. Xiao Yan sighed softly again. He looked up again and saw that the seven-colored hue on the little fairy doctor's face was gradually fading. Is she about to wake up? Muttering softly, Xiao Yan sat quietly for another moment. The little fairy doctor, who was lying on the bed with her eyes closed, slowly opened them. Her jade hand twitched slightly, and a hint of a bitter expression gradually appeared at the corner of her mouth. A moment later, the bitterness slowly spread. The little fairy doctor suddenly pulled the blanket up to cover her face. A broken sob could be heard coming from within the blanket. I couldn't control myself just now. I truly deserve to die. Sitting on the chair, hearing the gentle, weak sobbing sound, Xiao Yan's mood also became heavy. He slowly stood up and sat down by the bed, gently patting the little fairy doctor's body, which was completely covered by the blanket. Sensing someone touching her, the blanket was violently pulled away. Seeing the young man sitting by the bed, the little fairy doctor's beautiful eyes widened. She quickly wiped away the tears still clinging to the corners of her eyes and quietly said, "How did you get in?" "I came in while you were unconscious." Xiao Yan said with a gentle smile. Hearing this, the little fairy doctor's face subtly changed. She quietly hid the black poison in her hand inside the blanket. A moment later, she suddenly seemed to remember something and hurriedly said, "You didn't touch me, did you?" "Ah. Having known each other for so long, I don't seem like the type to take advantage of someone in distress, do I?" Xiao Yan said with a strained laugh. "No, I'm not talking about that. I mean, you didn't touch my body, did you?" Waving her hand hastily, the little fairy doctor explained. "No." Xiao Yan shook his head. Seeing Xiao Yan shake his head, the little fairy doctor finally breathed a sigh of relief. She curled her long, jade-like legs, resting her fair chin on her knees, and quietly said, "I'm fine. It was just a small problem that occurred while I was mixing the medicine." Xiao Yan didn't say anything. His eyes stared at the little fairy doctor. After a long time, he suddenly whispered, "Is it really impossible to hide that thing?" Hearing this, the little fairy doctor was first stunned, then her soft body suddenly stiffened. She looked at Xiao Yan with an ugly expression. "You. What do you know? I read the 7-colored poison scripture, and I also know that you ate poison." Xiao Yan stared at her beautiful eyes that were trying hard to avoid his gaze, and he said, "Then, do you also know about the calamity poison body?" Seeing Xiao Yan nod, the little fairy doctor smiled sadly, biting her rosy lips, and said, "Then are you also afraid of me?" Staring at the tears flowing down the little fairy doctor's soft cheeks, Xiao Yan felt a little emotional in his heart. He shook his head. A warm smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He lightly patted her head and gently said, "I am afraid. I was just planning to run away. But no matter what, we have been through thick and thin together, ah." Hearing this, the little fairy doctor's tears stopped in her bright eyes. She stared at Xiao Yan with her mouth agape. "You are truly not afraid of me? Then will you still dare to eat the food I cook in the future?" "Anytime," Xiao Yan said with a squinted smile. Looking at his warmly smiling face, a stream of warmth flowed through the little fairy doctor's heart. Wiping away the tears on her face, she gently murmured in her heart, "Thank you, Xiao Yan. Perhaps you will be my only friend in the future. But no matter what happens later, as long as you still consider me a friend, even if I truly become the great poison master that everyone fears in front of you, I will still be the little fairy doctor of Qingshan town." Since the day Xiao Xian fell into a coma after consuming poison, life in the small valley once again became as it was, leisurely and peaceful. Moreover, perhaps because after Xiao Yan knew her, it seems that Xiao Yan's original act, which was merely a little sympathy stemming from his heart, unexpectedly and coincidentally won, and truly gained Xiao Xian's complete trust. Which was something Xiao Yan had never anticipated. Time in the valley passed calmly, day by day, slowly going by. The purple flame inside Xiao Yan's body was also like the brightest midday sun. The continuous and persistent arduous cultivation made it become even more robust. Of course, such speed was naturally all thanks to the assistance of the purple crystal source. If it were not for this magical aid, it would absolutely be impossible for Xiao Yan to develop the purple flame to its current state without several years of time cultivating arduously under the sun. Xiao Yan slowly opened his eyes. Within his pitch-black pupils, the dense purple flame danced and struggled for a while, then gradually faded away. This period of cultivation ended. But Xiao Yan did not get up and avoid the sun as he usually did. Instead, he raised his head, slightly squinted his eyes, looking at the distant, huge, dazzling sun in the sky. He slowly raised his hand and lightly shouted, "Manifest." Following the soft shout, the purple flame powerfully and repeatedly appeared on Xiao Yan's hand. At this time, the purple flame not only enveloped his hand, but also spread upwards along his arm, slowly stopping only when it reached his elbow. lowering his head to look at the arm that seemed to have transformed into a mass of purple flame. A wave of joy rose on Xiaoyan's face. He clenched his fist tightly and suddenly struck forcefully on the ground in front of him. Immediately, following a loud rumbling sound, a long, narrow crack. Starting from the point of contact with Xiaoyan's fist, continuously spread out in all directions, running straight until it reached the cliff face, and then stopped. The power is truly strong. Looking at the destruction caused by his single punch, Xiaoyan couldn't help but exclaim in shock. It can be considered barely satisfactory, but currently the power of the purple flame is already close to the limit of your control. If you continue to cultivate it further, I'm afraid it will start to retaliate. Yao Lao gently flew out from the ring, glanced at the purple flame. Before it retaliates. Lowering his head to look at the purple flame rising on his hand, Xiaoyan smiled at the corner of his mouth, tilted his head and asked. When will we make the move? Around noon tomorrow. Today you need to prepare a few things first. Yao Lao said with a smile. What else needs to be prepared? Refining the heavenly flame to evolve the technique is not as smoothly. Therefore, you need to prepare 2 types of medicinal pills to guard against unexpected situations. Yao Lao said with a long laugh. Vessel guarding pill. Ice heart pill. These 2 types of medicinal pills are both Tier 2 medicinal pills. Generally speaking, with your strength as a Tier 1 alchemist, it would be difficult to successfully refine them. However, you currently possess a heavenly flame that is much stronger than the flames created by ordinary Do Qi. Therefore, the probability of success might be slightly higher. Yao Lao spoke seriously. Vessel guarding pill. As the name suggests, it has the function of protecting the meridians in the body. When you are consuming the heavenly flame, you naturally need to circulate the heavenly flame. According to the circulation route of the flame mantra cultivation technique. However, the nature of the heavenly flame is not as gentle as Do Qi. Where it passes will cause no small destruction. And the meridians are the most important thing during cultivation. They absolutely cannot be damaged even slightly. Therefore, this vessel guarding pill you must prepare beforehand. Furthermore, if your mind is eroded, then the entire refinement process will naturally be declared a failure and destroyed. Moreover, it is possible that it could leave you with after effects that are difficult to erase later. Therefore, these 2 items are things you absolutely cannot lack when refining the purple flame. Seeing Yao Lao's solemn and focused expression, Xiaoyan also dared not be careless. And quickly nodded. This is the recipe for the 2 types of medicinal pills. The necessary medicinal ingredients can happen to be found in this small valley, but apart from those, you still need a Tier 2 wood attribute magical core, and an ice attribute magical core, 1 of each. Yao Lao's finger gently tapped Xiaoyan's forehead, transmitting the recipe information. And added the supplement. Tier 2 wood attribute magical core and ice attribute. Hearing this, Xiaoyan was stunned, then nodded helplessly. He only had 1 Tier 2 wood attribute magical core in his storage. It was what he managed to obtain last time, after considering his own strength and painstakingly hunting a Tier 2 magical beast. He did not have a Tier 2 ice attribute magical core in hand. It seems that for the next period of time, he will have to personally enter the magical beast mountain range to hunt a magical beast to obtain this type of magical core. Closing his eyes, recalling the necessary ingredients for the 2 types of medicinal pills, Xiaoyan once again looked at the sky, then jumped down the stone mountain, found Xiaoxian in the valley who was quietly studying the 7-colored poison classic, and explained his current purpose for leaving the valley to her. Hearing that Xiaoyan wanted to go out to hunt a Tier 2 magical beast, Xiaoxian immediately felt a little worried and wanted to go with him, but she was gradually persuaded and stopped by Xiaoyan. After all, with her current strength, he could not guarantee her safety in front of a Tier 2 magical beast. Stopped by Xiaoyan, Xiaoxian could only reluctantly give up the decision to go together, but she still worriedly gave Xiaoyan a poisonous pill that she had meticulously concocted. He was very clear about Xiaoxian's ability to create poison, so Xiaoyan did not refuse this time, carefully and cautiously putting away the pitch-black medicinal pill. Then said thank you and quickly rushed towards the cliff face ahead. Under Xiaoxian's gaze, his feet stomped hard, creating a loud bang. His figure was like an eagle spreading its wings, flying straight up towards the peak of the valley. Standing on the mountain peak, Xiaoyan looked at Xiaoxian, who was waving goodbye at the bottom of the valley, then his body slightly shook, and the purple cloud wings stretched out from behind him. Under the sunlight, they emitted countless dazzling purple rays. Standing on the top of the valley, as soon as Xiaoyan raised his eyes, he could see a little less than half of the shape of the magical beast mountain range. In his field of vision, the emerald green of the vegetation occupied the absolute majority. Occasionally, a gust of strong wind blew from within the mountain range, instantly creating a wave of green ripples above the patch of forest, which was somewhat vast and magnificent. Raising his head to look at the dazzling sun, Xiaoyan wiped his sweat. The two wings behind him gently shook. Then he abruptly jumped off the cliff. The two wings spread out at this moment, borrowing the lifting force of the wind, and quickly flew towards the inside of the magical beast mountain range. The magical beast mountain range was extremely vast. To search for and locate an Ice-attribute Tier 2 magical beast within such a large area was indeed a bit difficult. After nearly an hour of searching with no results, Xiaoyan could only reluctantly ask Yao Lao for help. Relying on Yao Lao's extraordinary soul perception, magical beasts of that tier within a radius of over 1,000 meters could hardly escape detection. Although it was previously agreed that after entering the magical beast mountain range, everything would depend on Xiaoyan himself, under the current circumstances, Yao Lao did not use pretexts to refuse again. He merely closed his eyes for a moment, then slowly opened them, pointed his finger towards the southeast, and said with a smile, "There is an Ice-attribute Tier 2 magical beast there, but the situation seems a little different. Do you want to go? If you say no, we can change to another place to search again. It will just take a little more time." Looking in the direction Yao Lao's finger pointed, Xiaoyan's two wings shook, and his body flew out powerfully. While rapidly flying, he tossed a chi recovery pill into his mouth, and softly muttered, "Let's go take a look first." With an extremely high flying speed, he quickly covered more than half the distance. As he was about to reach his destination, Xiaoyan's eyebrows suddenly slightly furrowed. Below, inside the forest, sounds of loud, panicked shouts were heard. Judging by the volume, it seemed there were quite a few people. "Master, is it this place?" Xiaoyan asked suspiciously. There are some mercenaries down there hunting magical beasts, but when they were luring a magical beast, they mistakenly lured out an Ice-attribute Tier 2 magical beast. They are currently being chased, causing chaos." Yao Lao's laughter came from the ring. Shaking his head helplessly, Xiaoyan slowly retracted the two wings behind him, which finally transformed into a tattoo, and pressed onto his back. His body twisted in mid-air. His feet firmly passed through the dense branches and leaves, and he landed on a large tree branch. His gaze looked down below. Below Xiaoyan was a fairly wide clearing. At this moment, there were at least dozens of mercenaries struggling to escape in the clearing. And right behind them were two Tier 2 magical beasts fiercely chasing and killing. With that many mercenaries who only possessed the strength of a Dou practitioner, they naturally had no chance of resisting the two Tier 2 magical beasts. Therefore, the situation below was basically a one-sided chase. Carefully sweeping his gaze over these blood battle mercenary group that Xiaoyan had encountered at the mercenary guild that day. Just as Xiaoyan was watching, a familiar, piercing, terrified scream suddenly sounded from within the struggling crowd below. Xiaoyan was slightly stunned, and his gaze looked down carefully, only to see a girl who seemed to have slipped on a stone under her foot. And at this moment, right behind her was a Tier 2 magical beast, opening its huge, fang-filled mouth, fiercely lunging at her. Staring at the girl with the piercing scream, Xiaoyan frowned. This girl was indeed the girl named Linger whom he had seen with Tagan's small team that day. Given Xiaoyan's current distance, even if he tried to rescue her, he would not make it in time, so he could only shake his head with a bitter smile. Just as the magical beast was about to snap at Linger, a roar suddenly sounded. Beast, scram! Following the roar, a large figure suddenly shot out from the forest. A rather large broadsword in his hand, densely covered in rising do qi, fiercely struck the claw of the Tier 2 magical beast. The impact immediately forced both to quickly retreat a step. Seeing the person who suddenly appeared actually able to fight with the Tier 2 magical beast without being defeated, Xiaoyan immediately cried out in surprise. Uncle Fei Lei. The girl, whose face was originally pale, relaxed in relief upon seeing the middle-aged man appear, and quickly said with a small, joyous face. Linger, step back. The middle-aged man, called Fei Lei, did not turn his head but gave a low shout. Then his gaze swept forward. Because of his appearance, the two magical beasts started to gather again, and he couldn't help but sigh bitterly. Mercenaries and asked worriedly. He was very clear about Fei Lei's strength. Tagan, reform the formation first, don't panic at any cost, or you will be killed one by them. Fei Lei shouted. Looking at the figure behind her, a cold female with a figure that could be described as devilish. Sister Qing, should we go and help Uncle Fei Lei hold them off for a bit? The female called. Sister Qing had a soft, somewhat tall and slender body. Moreover, her skin was not the kind that was fair like jade, instead, it was a somewhat alluring bronze color. A black leather top clung tightly to her, revealing a pair of tempting curves on her chest. Because the leather top was cut just right at the navel, her small, soft, flat, full waist was naturally exposed without concealment. Extremely desirable. The female's lower body was likewise a piece of short, black leather skirt that hugged her figure. A dagger was tightly bound to her slender legs. This image of her was like a female leopard in the jungle, full of explosive power and wild, stubborn temperament. And for this type of wild-spirited woman, when men first saw her, the first impression was to conquer her. To make this female leopard unleash her normal feminine nature, submissively and gracefully lying in their arms. Naturally, this thought did indeed arise in Xiaoyan's mind when he first saw her. However, the thought that had just appeared was immediately discarded. After all, he was not the type of person whose mind was overcome by lust. His long-term arduous cultivation made his self-control extremely extraordinary. The female called Xianxia slightly frowned and lightly shouted at Linger. With the people we have here, if we don't properly reform our formation up earlier, how could we have lured out two Tier 2 magical beasts? Just now, some of our comrades' lives were almost in danger because of it. Being reprimanded like this, Linger was also a little aggrieved, but she didn't dare to say anything more, and could only turn back to stand next to the female. Xianxia, if an accident occurs, you take Linger and leave first. We will hold them off. Here. A young man in white clothes approached and said with a smile. Xianxia glanced at the young man and said indifferently. The group leader has not given the order, I will not leave first. Shrugging helplessly to the side. Seeing Mulan being rebuffed, Linger secretly giggled. If it were before, when she saw Mulan trying to curry favor with Xianxia, she would definitely feel secretly uncomfortable, but now she didn't know why. Big brother Mulan, whom she had previously somewhat adored, was now difficult to make her feel that way again. Moreover, occasionally, when her mind wandered, the back of a young boy, the young boy with the huge black heavy ruler on his back, inexplicably popped into her head. I heard he actually easily killed Mushi of the wolf. head mercenary group, and that guy was a strong expert who even Uncle Fei Lei had a headache dealing with. Ah. He really is a liar, clearly saying he only had 8-segment do qi. The small hand held onto Xianxia's arm beside her. Linga recalled the hot news she had heard in Qingshan town that was still buzzing after a month. Vague feelings arose in the girl's heart. Blood Battle Group members form a team. Hold off that ice attribute Tier 2 magical beast for the group leader. While Linga was nervously thinking randomly, Tagan on the side had quickly reorganized the team perfectly. With a wave of his hand, more than 10 people from the group of mercenaries immediately stepped forward and rushed out, cooperating to separate and block one Tier 2 magical beast that was trying to surround and kill Fei Lei. Blocked by a motley crowd of fish, this slightly large magical beast immediately let out a furious growl. Its huge and sharp claws swung. Yourselves in front, fire attribute Do practitioners attack its weak points. After just the first contact, the team had fallen into a disadvantage, Tagan quickly shouted. As Tagan's shout came, under the repeated attacks of this Tier 2 magical beast, was so weak that it was almost unable to withstand a single blow. Breaking through the team blocking in front of it, the ice attribute magical beast's eyes began to turn dark red with murderous intent. Several mercenaries who couldn't dodge in time were immediately hit, spitting blood and staggering backwards. Group leader. We can't hold it anymore. Seeing the Tier 2 magical beast slaughtering at will, Tagan's face turned pale, as he shouted towards Fei Lei, who was bitterly fighting with the other Tier 2 magical beast. The giant sword in his hand fiercely forced the opposing Tier 2 magical beast back, and Fei Lei quickly retreated a few steps. While everyone was watching, he suddenly raised his head and shouted loudly at a large tree. Friend, everyone here is making a living in the magical beast mountain range. If it is convenient, please lend a hand and save us this once. The Blood Battle Mercenary Group. Lei was anticipating. Only a moment after Fei Lei's shout was transmitted, a response finally came from the forest. I can help you kill that ice attribute Tier 2 magical beast. But if there's a magical core inside its body, it will belong to your excellency. Hearing this, Fei Lei was delighted and shouted loudly without hesitation. Ha ha! The group leader is truly straightforward. And a black figure suddenly swooped down like an eagle and landed forcefully. Clang! Xianxia gritted her teeth, desperately colliding with the pursuing ice attribute magical beast. The powerful force immediately made her face pale as she quickly retreated. You are reading the story taken from the .com. The magical beast knocked Xianxia back, let out a ferocious growl, and then rushed forward fiercely again. Just as Xianxia was preparing to desperately fight again, a black figure shot down from midair like an arrow, and finally slammed hard onto the ground. A loud collision sound immediately rang out, causing dust to fly up. The dust slowly dispersed, and a slender figure with a large, strange black iron ruler on his back appeared here in everyone's sight. Xiaoyan, especially with the sign of the large heavy ruler on his back, just seeing the heavy ruler immediately made Tagan and the others cry out in surprise. Ha ha, Uncle Tagan. Have you been well since we parted? Xiaoyan slowly turned his head, his gaze first swept over Xianxia behind him, then he smiled at Tagan on the side. All right, let's put the old stories aside and talk later. First let's deal with this beast. Looking at Tagan waving his hand with a hearty smile, Xiaoyan turned back. He couldn't help but smile at the huge Tier 2 magical beast in front of him. He slowly lifted one foot, then stomped hard on the ground. Following a loud bang, Xiaoyan's figure transformed into a black shadow like lightning, and appeared on the left side of the magical beast. His hand tightly gripped the black heavy ruler, suddenly pulled it up, and the black heavy ruler left his back and stood upright, creating a fierce sound like the tearing of wind, and heavily smashed onto the magical beast's head. The enormous force immediately sent the magical beast's gigantic body flying up, colliding and knocking down several large trees before stopping. Good. Fei Lei's eyes were constantly watching this side. Seeing this incredibly terrifying move by Xiaoyan, he couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. Xianxia stood behind Xiaoyan, watching the Tier 2 magical beast being sent flying over 10 meters by Xiaoyan, as if he were hitting a leather ball. Her jade hand couldn't help but cover her small rosy mouth, her expression of away had her eyes firmly fixed on him since Xiaoyan appeared. Seeing him display such great divine might at this moment, a strange light immediately flashed in her eyes. Roar! In the distance, the magical beast stood up again after being sent flying. Being knocked away by a human was an insult that made it roar in anger. Icy cold air slowly swirled and rose up all over its body. It opened its wide mouth, and more than 10 sharp ice spikes flew towards Xiaoyan. Seeing the oncoming ice spikes, the black heavy ruler in Xiaoyan's hand was flipped over and blocked in front of, covering the heavy ruler, and chuckled softly. The purple flame on his hand slowly emerged, lightly touching the ruler's body and instantly appearing, completely dissolving the thin layer of ice. Roar! Seeing that the ice spike attack was ineffective, the magical beast once again roared angrily towards the sky. The fur on its body gradually stood up, and a burst of icy cold white air circled around its body, instantly solidifying into a suit of snow-white ice armor. The ice armor completely concealed the magical beast's body, looking like an ordinary ice sculpture under the sunlight. After the ice armor was covered, the magical beast moved its 4 feet again, rushing towards Xiaoyan like a huge stone slab. Gazing at the aggressively charging magical beast, Xiaoyan slowly breathed a sigh of relief. His hand actually let go of the heavy ruler, and he clenched his fist. The purple flame burned and enveloped nearly half of his arm. Lowering his head to look at the purple flame swirling on his arm, Xiaoyan raised his head to look at the approaching magical beast. Because of the ice armor on its body, a cold wind carrying oppressive force struck him directly. Lightly exhaling, Xiaoyan's foot suddenly stomped hard on the ground. His body, in everyone's sight, was like an arrow leaving the bowstring. Everyone around was stunned with wide eyes and gaping mouths, not expecting him to choose to meet force with force against the magical beast. Is this person crazy? Looking at Xiaoyan's actions, everyone present murmured in surprise. Came out. In that instant, a fierce, chaotic, terrifying force violently smashed down on the magical beast's head. With just the first contact, the ice armor on the magical beast's body was instantly crushed and melted by Xiaoyan's purple flame, creating a huge hole, and the magical beast's large head was immediately exposed inside. Thump! The fist with the swirling purple flame heavily struck the magical beast's head. After a brief pause, with the enormous heat of the purple flame, Xiaoyan's fist penetrated the magical beast's head amid a series of vibrating and sizzling sounds. The heavy sound echoed in the open forest. Nearly half of Xiaoyan's arm was submerged inside the magical beast's head. Fresh blood dripped along his arm, finally creating a series of arm, took out a coarse cloth, and began to wipe off the remaining blood on his arm. As Xiaoyan's arm was withdrawn, the Tier 2 magical beast in front, which had once chased the dozens of people from the blood battle mercenary group everywhere, finally crashed down with a loud boom under everyone's shaken gaze. Seeing the magical beast beside him collapse, Xiaoyan tossed away his brow, shook his head helplessly, wiped the fresh blood from the dagger and put it away, stood up, and shrugged slightly towards everyone who was staring intently at him. It seems I'm quite unlucky, there's nothing at all. Hearing what Xiaoyan said, everyone slowly recovered from their shock. Seeing that Xiaoyan had no gain, Ka Gang also shook his head with a sigh of regret. Then waved his hand and shouted loudly, "Everyone, help the leader deal with that magical beast first." Hearing Ka Gang's shout, the members of the Blood War mercenary group hurriedly gripped the ruler. Xiaoyan leaned against a tree branch, a blade of grass between his lips, looking down at his fist which, despite being wiped, still had some blood residue on the skin. In his eyes, however, excitement leaped. Although the reason for the one-punch kill of this second-tier magical beast was due to the attribute counter, the power of the violet flame truly exceeded Xiaoyan's expectations. If it were normal, even if he used the ultimate 8 extremes collapse, at most he could only injure the second-tier magical beast. Killing it was truly somewhat impossible. His finger moved from the ring hidden under his cloak, and Xiaoyan took out a chi recovery pill, then subtly slipped it into his mouth. His throat moved slightly, swallowing it down. Sigh, this low-level cultivation method, if it doesn't evolve, I'm afraid I won't even have enough chi recovery pills to eat, Xiaoyan murmured helplessly, feeling the dou qi in his body gradually recovering. Not far from where Xiaoyan was leaning boredly against the tree branch, 2 beautiful figures slowly walked towards him. Hey, Xiaoyan, are you okay? The girl's soft, clear voice made Xiaoyan listlessly raise his head to look. His gaze casually swept over Linga, then paused on the girl with the demonic figure for a moment, before reluctantly pulling his gaze back towards this girl who had left him with the impression of being spoiled and willful. Xiaoyan truly had no mind to pay attention, so he immediately replied indifferently, I'm fine. Being treated with such indifference by Xiaoyan. Linger's smiling face became slightly flushed. Her small, rosy mouth opened, wanting to speak, but for some reason, she couldn't utter a single soothing word, likely realizing what kind of impression she had left on him last time. Your hand is bleeding. Do you need a bandage? Seeing the heavy atmosphere, the girl with the demonic figure had no choice but to speak up. Immediately, a cold, clear voice sounded by Xiaoyan's ear. Raising his eyes to look at the girl who looked quite perfect, Xiaoyan's gaze just glanced over her and then moved away. He shook his head slightly. Similarly speaking with a hint of helplessness, no need, it's nothing. Xiaoyan's flat demeanor, which was no different from before, also made Xianxia, Qinglin/Qingxue pause. It wasn't that she. The atmosphere between the 3 people became heavy again. The heavy atmosphere persisted like this for a long time. Finally, it was broken by a burst of cheers in the forest. The 3 of them. And instructing a few mercenaries to search for and dig out the core, Fei Lei led the group including Ka Gang, laughing loudly as they walked towards Xiaoyan. The hearty and strong laughter startled many birds in the forest, causing them to fly up, ha ha. Little brother Xiaoyan. I've heard of your great reputation, but have never been fortunate enough to see it with my own eyes. Reputation can I have in Qingshan town? Heh heh. You're so young, yet even a cunning person like Mushi lost in your hands. Speaking of reputation, it's not small. At least no one in my blood war mercenary group can compare with you. Fei Lei assessed Xiaoyan up and down a bit more, and couldn't help but inwardly sigh and shake his head again. Seeing Xiaoyan's move earlier, he figured the rumors about Mushi being killed by him must be true. He really didn't know how this person cultivated. He was barely under 20 years old, how could he be so monstrous? With a casual smile, Xiaoyan looked up at the sky, and said helplessly, I apologize, that magical beast's body also did not contain a Tier 2 ice attribute magic core. Therefore, I can only continue searching, and I'm afraid I cannot continue chatting with you all. As he spoke, Xiaoyan slung the heavy Xian ruler he was holding back onto his back, preparing to re-enter the forest to search for his target. My sincerest apologies for making you waste your effort and return empty-handed again. If you don't mind, why not take the magical core from this magical beast? Although it's only an earth attribute 1. Stretching out his hand, Fei Lei said apologetically. Forget it, I only need a Tier 2 ice attribute magic core. You all keep that item. Smilingly waving his hand, Xiaoyan turned around and headed toward the depths of the forest. Wait a moment. The cold but pleasant voice of the girl suddenly came from behind, causing Xiaoyan to stop his steps. He turned around questioningly to look at Xianxia. Are you very much in need of a Tier 2 Ice Attribute Magic Core? Xianxia asked, her eyebrows slightly knitted. It's a bit urgent. Hearing this, Xianxia hesitated slightly, then extended her fair hand and slowly took off the necklace from her slender neck. One end of the necklace was hidden inside Xianxia's clothing. With her gentle movement, the necklace was completely taken out. At the end of the necklace, a perfectly round white ice bead was unexpectedly hanging. This is the magic core of a Tier 2 Ice Attribute Spiral Beast. You helped our Blood War mercenary group this time, so take this as compensation. With some reluctance, Xianxia lightly touched the beautiful white. A long time, there was even a faint scent of her body lingering on it. Xianxia. Seeing Xianxia's action, Fei Lei, who was on the side, couldn't help but call out, pondered for a moment, and then said helplessly, since you are willing, then so be it. However, this is your private item. After we return, we will compensate you with other items. After all, this is the rule of the group. No need. If it weren't for his help, we here would have probably lost at least half of our teammates. Xianxia smiled and shook her head. Indeed, it is a Tier 2 Ice Attribute Magic Core. After briefly sensing the energy within the magic core in his hand, a joyful expression appeared on Xiaoyan's face. He unceremoniously put the magic core away, looked up at Xianxia's beautiful face and smiled, thank you. However, since this is your item, me taking it like this is indeed not good for you. How about this? After frowning and pondering for a moment, a small jade bottle appeared in Xiaoyan's palm. He then tossed it towards Xianxia, and said with a light smile, inside are 5 qi recovery pills, which can help you quickly recover do qi when you are in imminent danger. Speaking of value, it's not inferior to this Tier 2 magic core of yours. Giving it to you now can be considered a fair transaction. Xianxia had not been prepared to receive anything in return. However, when the 3 words qi recovery pill entered her ears, her smiling expression slightly froze. She immediately rushed forward, carefully received the jade bottle, and opened it. Upon looking inside, her beautiful face was filled with both surprise and joy. It's really this kind of medicinal pill. Hearing this, Fei Lei and the others on the side were also somewhat moved. In their area, it was truly rare to see authentic medicinal pills produced by an alchemist. Therefore, when they saw Xiaoyan casually take out 5 qi recovery pills, they were all deeply shocked. This little fellow, his background is indeed not simple. Judging by this display of generosity, he is most likely the young master of some great family who came out for experience. That Mushi was truly unlucky enough. Looking at the jade bottle in Xianxia's hand, Fei Lei couldn't help but think to himself. Everyone, thank you. Xiaoyan still has urgent matters, so I cannot stay long. Farewell. With the magic core in hand, Xiaoyan was also somewhat impatient to return to refine the 2 types of medicinal pills needed to consume the violet flame. He immediately clasped his hands in a salute towards Fei Lei and the others, stomped his foot on the ground, and his figure swiftly shot into the forest. Finally, he gradually disappeared from everyone's sight. Watching Xiaoyan slowly disappear into the shadows of the forest, Fei Lei couldn't help but let out a sigh. He said with a wry smile, I originally wanted to invite little brother Xiaoyan to join our Blood War mercenary group, but seeing his actions, he has such a grand presence. I really don't have the face to even bring it up. Let's go. Don't let your thoughts run wild. With his talent, it's fundamentally impossible for him to stay in a small mercenary group like ours. I speculate that his journey to the magical Beast Mountain range is primarily for experience. With his cultivation talent and shrewdness, the vast outer world is the stage for him to showcase his skills. As for us, it's still appropriate for us to be content with being small mercenaries. Who knows, maybe 10 or 20 years from now, when he returns to the small Qingshan town, he might already be a great Do master or even a Do Ling expert. Putting away the jade bottle, Xianxia turned around and said flatly. Ha! Ha, that's true. Shaking his head with a self-mocking laugh, Fei Lei waved his hand, led his subordinates, and loudly sang a song of triumph. Carrying the corpses of the two magical beasts, as they rushed back towards the small Qingshan town. Although they did not have the talent like Xiaoyan to pursue that kind of power. Small characters can also have comfortable lives as small characters. Having entered the forest, Xiaoyan only stopped after running quickly for a while. A slight tremble ran through his back. And the violet cloud wings slowly spread out. Douqi circulated a few times within his body, finally pouring into the two wings on his back. The story you are reading is sourced from website name. Instantly, Xiaoyan's body slowly rose. The two wings flapped again, and his figure directly broke free from the constraint of the trees, soaring up to the clear blue sky. After discerning his position, he spread his wings and flew swiftly toward the small valley's location. On the way, Xiaoyan consumed 3 qi recovery pills. Only then did he gradually see the small valley covered in thick mist below. His spirit immediately lifted. He directly pierced through the thick mist, flew into the small valley, and as he was about to land, Xiaoyan's wings lightly trembled, turning into tattoos that adhered to his shoulders. After experiencing a great battle, returning once again to the quiet small valley, Xiaoyan couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. He quickly walked to the thatched hut in the valley, and found the little doctor fairy anxiously waiting. Seeing Xiaoyan return safely, the little doctor fairy also felt as if a heavy stone had been lifted from her heart. After chatting with the little doctor fairy, Xiaoyan hurried to the valley and took out all the collected medicinal materials for the 2 types of medicinal pills. After checking them, he then carried the medicinal materials, excitedly ascending to the cave on the cliff face, preparing to start refining the 2 medicinal pills that were the most crucial step for consuming the violet flame. Sitting cross-legged in the cave, Xiaoyan took out the medicine cauldron from his ring, and gently placed it in front of him. He then laid out all the necessary ingredients for refining the Vesselguard pill, and the ice heart pill beside him, letting out a sigh of relief after a thorough check. Seeing that Xiaoyan was about to start the pill refinement, Yao Lao also nimbly flew out of the ring, landed on a giant rock, crossed his arms, and watched Xiaoyan's movements with a smile. Xiaoyan glanced at Yao Lao, slowly closed his eyes, and once again mentally reviewed the information Yao Lao had transmitted, the formulas, quantities, and heat control required for the 2 medicinal pills. He then slowly opened his eyes, gently rubbed his hands, placed his palm on the cauldron's air vent, and slowly sunk his mind into his body. He carefully regulated the violet flame from the center of his Do Qi vortex. The violet flame, enveloped in Do Qi, swiftly traveled through the meridians, then passed through his palm, and directly entered the cauldron. As the violet flame entered the cauldron, a small thump sound was made as the violet flame roared and burned inside the cauldron. Xiaoyan's eyes peered through the clear surface of the cauldron, watching the violet flame leap and flicker. Inside, he waited until the cauldron's initially cool temperature gradually rose before turning his head to smile at Yao Lao. Then, his expression grew serious again. His soul perception flowed out from his body, traveled through his arm, and entered the cauldron, easily subduing the unruly flame. You can start. Seeing the violet flame inside the cauldron slowly become docile, Yao Lao smiled and nodded, thinking to himself, this little fellow is becoming more and more proficient in using his soul power. He can control the flame's temperature so quickly. With a smile, Xiaoyan skillfully picked up a vine, entirely green, from beside him. This plant was called the evergreen flower, and its leaves contained a warm, moist energy, making it the most suitable herb for protecting the meridians. His gaze briefly swept over the evergreen flower in his hand, and after a moment's pause, Xiaoyan placed it into the cauldron. As soon as the evergreen flower entered the cauldron, the violet flame immediately flared up violently. In an instant, the initially green leaves quickly turned withered and yellow step by step. Xiaoyan struggled to use his soul power to slowly lower the violet flame's heat. The faint, small flame, with its stable temperature neither increasing nor decreasing, gradually incinerated the suspended evergreen flower. The calcination continued like this. The surface of the evergreen flower's leaves began to seep out drops and drops of green liquid. As more and more liquid seeped out, the leaves quickly withered. When the last drop of green liquid was squeezed out from the evergreen flower's body, the plant itself instantly turned into black ash, sinking to the bottom of the cauldron. Not bad. Your soul perception is so excellent. Even some second-tier alchemists can't compare. Seeing Xiaoyan successfully complete the first step, Yao Lao couldn't help but smile and praise. Smiling. Blending stage. After obtaining the energy fluid from the evergreen flower, Xiaoyan once again consecutively refined 3 different colored liquids, along with a light green powder obtained from roasting the tan ling fruit. During the refining process, he also created several waste powders. Because this was his first time compounding these medicinal materials, which required meticulous proportions and flame control, even with Xiaoyan's excellent soul perception, he still ruined 12 portions of the precious herbs. If the medicinal materials in the valley hadn't been abundant. Refined that he nodded slightly. Although Xiaoyan ruined many medicinal materials during the refining process, this level of failure was considered quite good for his first time refining this type of pill. After all the materials were refined, Xiaoyan also let out a long breath, took a qi recovery pill from his ring, put it in his mouth, and sat cross-legged to restore the dou qi in his body. Seeing Xiaoyan's appearance, Yao Lao also shook his head with some helplessness. No wonder Xiaoyan was constantly desperately eager for his cultivation method to evolve quickly. He had only been refining for this short while, yet the dou qi in his body was already depleted so much. The pills he was currently refining were only tier 2. If he were to refine tier 3 or even tier 4 pills later, he would likely fail due to dou qi exhaustion halfway through, unless he had a full pouch of qi recovery pills. After sitting cross-legged and recovering for a long time, Xiaoyan finally opened his eyes. Seeing Yao Lao's helpless look, he could only give a wry smile, placed the various refined materials in front of him, and finally opened his hand again. A tier 2 ice attribute magic core, completely snow-white and continuously emitting cold air, appeared in his hand. Looking at this tier 2 ice attribute magic core, Xiaoyan slowly let out a breath. He flicked it with his finger, and the magic core was accurately shot into the cauldron. At the same time, Xiaoyan's palm quickly touched the cauldron's air vent, instantly releasing the soul perception that had been suppressing the violet flame's temperature. Immediately, the violet flame inside the cauldron flared up rapidly, almost filling the entire interior of the cauldron. Under the violet flame's burning, the tier 2 ice attribute magic core immediately began to give off icy cold air, struggling to resist the fate of being destroyed. Inside the cauldron, the violet flame and the ice mist constantly wrestled. Wisps of white mist seeped out from the top of the cauldron, continuously spreading outwards. Looking at the increasingly dense white vapor in the cave, Yao Lao gently waved his sleeve, sending out a powerful gust of wind that sent all the white mist flying out. Immediately, the cave was clear again. However, Xiaoyan did not have the leisure to pay attention to this. All his concentration was focused on the standoff between the violet flame and the ice attribute magic core. The violet flame from his body continuously and powerfully flowed into the cauldron. The ice attribute magic core was equally unyielding, constantly releasing blasts of cold air, desperately trying to escape its fate of destruction. The standoff lasted until Xiaoyan swallowed a qi recovery pill, only then did it slowly break. Although the ice attribute magic core contained substantial ice attribute energy, it ultimately had no external support. Thus, being persistently roasted by the violet flame, the magic core's cold air shield was finally breached. As the cold air shield shattered, the violet flame let out a roar of finally began to appear on the hard surface of the ice attribute magic core. After a long while, following a clear crackling sound, the surface of the magic core unexpectedly turned into dust and scattered downwards. After the dust dissipated, a mass of snow-white energy liquid appeared, floating within the cauldron. Seeing the appearance of the snow-white energy liquid, the tense expression on Xiaoyan's face finally showed a hint of joy. He used the violet flame to slowly roast it for another moment before extracting and filtering it, carefully storing it in a jade bottle. After refining the energy from the magic core, Xiaoyan quickly took out the various pre-refined materials in front of him, and placed them all into the cauldron. The violet flame enveloped all the materials that had entered the cauldron, and then a fierce round of incineration began. As the intense flame continuously burned, the various medicinal materials of different colors began to gradually merge. Liquid and powder blended together, then slowly tumbled within the flames. Gradually changing over time, the rudimentary form of the medicinal pill also vaguely began to appear inside the cauldron. The pill was currently only in its initial form, rough and uneven, and its surface was completely devoid of the expected luster. It was just a block of green and purple patches, looking like an ordinary, strange, angular object, completely unlike the smooth and brightly colored finished pill. Looking at the rudimentary form of the pill, the heavy stone that had been weighing on Xiaoyan's heart finally completely dropped. Having reached this stage, the pill refinement was almost 90% successful. All that remained was the final step, pill condensation. Holding the bottle containing the refined magic core energy, Xiaoyan tilted his head to look at Yao Lao. Seeing Yao Lao smile and nod, he lightly inhaled, no longer hesitating, and tilted the bottle, pouring the magic core energy into the cauldron. As the white energy liquid entered the cauldron, he controlled it to cover the basic pill form. It then slowly began to rotate. At the same time, Xiaoyan's soul perception quickly suppressed the violet flame's heat, maintaining the necessary low temperature, and slowly incinerated the pill block wrapped in magic core energy. The final pill condensation step lasted for nearly half an hour. The magic core energy gradually seeped into the pill under the stable incineration of the violet flame. At this moment, Xiaoyan once again used his soul power to suddenly compress the violet flame. Instantly, the violet flame violently flared up, and in an instant, it enveloped the pill with its frantically rising heat. The purple flame that flared up was immediately retracted, quickly suppressed to its lowest point by Xiaoyan again. And at this moment, as the purple flame receded, a perfectly round, jade-white medicinal pill with a dazzling, sparkling glow appeared inside the cauldron. Looking at the jade-white pill, Xiaoyan couldn't help but crack a smile. He flicked his hand, drew the pill out of the cauldron, and quickly took a jade bottle from the side to put it in. As his hand left the cauldron, the violet flame inside also rapidly disappeared. After a moment, the agitation inside the cauldron also gradually calmed down. Shaking the pill bottle in his hand, Xiaoyan lightly sniffed the medicinal aroma coming from the opening of the bottle, his face inevitably showing intoxication. After a long while, he turned to Yao Lao on the side and smiled. The vessel guard pill is successful. Not bad. Although there were a few minor errors during the refining process, your performance was excellent. Nodding with a sigh, Yao Lao glanced at the materials for the ice heart pill on the ground and smiled. Take a break. Next, you still need to refine the ice heart pill. With this success, I think next time you should be able to reduce the amount of wasted medicinal materials. Nodding, Xiaoyan carefully put away the vessel guard pill, then once again took out a qi recovery pill and swallowed it, closing his eyes to slowly wait for the dou qi in his body to recover. Half an hour later, Xiaoyan slowly opened his eyes. He had now recovered to his peak state again. Looking at the cauldron in front of him, he secretly took a breath, then stretched out his hands, and the pill refinement began once more. Just as Yao Lao said, with the successful refinement of the vessel guard pill, the refinement of the ice heart pill this time was incredibly smooth. Apart from the initial stages where Xiaoyan was slightly clumsy due to the need to control the flame for different medicinal materials, the subsequent series of steps were as fluid as flowing water. This refining session satisfied even the somewhat strict Yao Lao, which showed how excellent Xiaoyan's performance was this time. 2 hours had passed since the start of the refining process. At this moment, Xiaoyan's face was a bit weary, but there was more excitement and joy, as he was tightly clutching 2 small jade bottles. Inside the transparent jade bottles were 2 smooth pills, one white and one green, playfully rolling around. These 2 pills were the Vesselguard pill and the Ice Heart pill, prepared by Xiaoyan for the purpose of consuming the violet flame. Looking at Xiaoyan's weary face, Yao Lao lightly glanced at the sky outside, which was gradually darkening, and smiled. The timing of the pill refinement is not far from what I estimated. During the daytime, due to the intense sun, the violet flame would have a slight power increase, which would add quite a bit of difficulty to your consumption of the violet flame. Therefore, this time is the most suitable for consuming the violet flame. How is it? Can you still persevere? Xiaoyan rubbed his temples and smiled. Of course. It's just that my spirit is a bit tired. To persevere through the entire night is not a problem. Ah, that's good then. Yao Lao smiled and nodded, pondering. How many qi recovery pills do you have left on you? 18 pills. Xiaoyan replied, touching his ring. That should be enough. Wait until you start consuming it. If you feel your dou qi can't hold up, use them immediately. When facing a situation like this, a sudden exhaustion of dou qi is absolutely not a good thing, Yao Lao said gravely. Nodding seriously, Xiaoyan naturally didn't dare to joke with his own small life. All right, now go and see the outcome. To be honest, I am also very curious to see how much this violet flame can evolve the flame mantra Fenju. Taking a breath, Yao Lao also spoke with a hint of anticipation. It's unlikely to jump directly to the profound tier level. Xiaoyan was somewhat self-aware about this matter. Although the violet flame's power was considerable, it was undoubtedly far inferior compared to a heavenly flame, Hua. I naturally know it can't increase to the profound tier level. Every level up for a cultivation method is a huge difference. The violet flame might be able to evolve the grade of the flame mantra cultivation method, but to evolve its tier, impossible. Rolling his eyes, Yao Lao scolded with a smile. Giving a wry smile, Xiaoyan didn't press the matter further. He sat cross-legged and closed his eyes, settling his mind in quiet meditation. After a moment, his eyes suddenly opened. A dazzling purple light, almost as solid as substance, shot out half an inch from his dark eyes. A moment later, the purple glow disappeared, and Xiaoyan slowly turned his head to look at Yao Lao, smiling foolishly. Success! Success! Yao Lao heavily let out a breath, smiled, and nodded. He could already feel that the dou qi in Xiaoyan's body was almost several times more powerful and vigorous than before. Seeing Yao Lao's affirmative nod, Xiaoyan's heart was filled with ecstasy. His mouth almost splitting open in a grin. He was about to laugh heartily, but at this moment, his expression suddenly changed drastically, because he suddenly noticed that the energy in the surroundings was fiercely rushing toward him. Master! What's going on? Turning his head, Xiaoyan asked with a hint of panic. This sudden change also made Yao Lao raise his eyebrows in slight surprise. He then swiftly moved in front of Xiaoyan, placing his hand on his body. The next moment, a smile spread across his old face. Good things truly don't just come one by one. They come in a continuous stream. Congratulations on breaking through the dou practitioner level, and finally becoming a dou master. Could it be a breakthrough? Xiaoyan asked in surprise. Yao Lao smiled and said. Prepare to break through. This is your chance, you must not miss it, or the next time you want to break through, you won't know how long you'll have to wait. Nodding excitedly, Xiaoyan didn't even have time to compare and measure what tier his technique had evolved to. He hurriedly sat down cross-legged again, put his hands together into a cultivation seal, and then immersed his mind into his body. As Xiaoyan entered the cultivation state, the energy flow of the surrounding heaven and earth became stronger and stronger. In the end, Xiaoyan's body almost turned into a black hole, continuously and frantically absorbing the powerful heaven and earth energy pouring into his body. Immersing his mind into his body. It had to be refined and purified within the meridians before it could be completely absorbed. Otherwise, it would also be a bad troublemaker, and might even contaminate his own hard-earned dou qi. However, although Xiaoyan was desperately trying to control this overwhelming incoming energy, he was ultimately unable to truly suppress it completely. After all, considering the scale of this energy, it was truly too terrifying. Everything gradually fell into a deadlock. Out of desperation, Xiaoyan had to first control a small portion. The rest of the energy could only be allowed to move around randomly inside his body for now. Fortunately, some vital areas had already been meticulously guarded by Xiaoyan, so although their random movement would bring some pain to Xiaoyan, it had not yet caused too great an injury for the time being. Under Xiaoyan's dedicated guidance, a portion of the heaven and earth energy forcefully entered the body. After circulating around in the meridians, it was finally completely refined into pure dou qi energy, and finally poured into the faint purple qi spiral. Following the pouring in of the powerful surge of dou qi, it was like throwing a huge rock into a still lake, splashing up huge waves. The qi spiral, which was previously spinning leisurely, instantly increased its rotational speed following the influx of dou qi energy. And as the rotational speed became increasingly terrifying, a fierce suction force strongly emerged from within. At this moment, Xiaoyan discovered with some horror that his mind could no longer control the amount of heaven and earth energy entering his body. Without the suppression of Xiaoyan's mind, the scattered heaven and earth energy inside Xiaoyan's body, along with the continuously surging energy from the outside world, all converged towards the sucking and tearing qi spiral below, and began to frantically pour into it. Outside in the cave, as the rotational speed of the qi spiral inside Xiaoyan's body increased, the suction force emitted from his body also became increasingly terrifying. In the end, the heterogeneous energy in the heaven and earth several zhang around Xiaoyan's body unexpectedly formed a beautiful and splendid energy cocoon surface. Yao Lao floated in midair, looking at the situation Xiaoyan was creating. He frowned slightly and said, "What is this little fellow doing? He dares to directly absorb such heterogeneous energy into the qi spiral." Frowning tightly, Yao Lao slowly breathed a sigh of relief, suppressed a fleeting worry in his heart, and quietly stared at Xiaoyan. In his heart, he was prepared to intervene at any time to help. Because looking at the current situation, Xiaoyan probably couldn't hold on for much longer. While Yao Lao outside was somewhat suspicious and worried, the deeply meditating Xiaoyan was simultaneously panicking in his heart. Because he discovered that as the external energy poured in frantically and forcefully, due to the lack of mental control, his meridians were already faintly showing a painful, distended feeling. If the frantic absorption continued like this, he was afraid his meridians would not escape the risk of swelling and rupturing. Damn it! Stop for me, ah! Having no power to stop it, Xiaoyan could only continuously use his mind to shout at the high-speed spinning purple qi spiral. Not knowing if the shouting had any effect, the high-speed spinning qi spiral suddenly slightly checked and slowed down. But before Xiaoyan could feel joy and fear, the qi spiral once again spun frantically, with even more ferocious speed. 20% at #. Seeing the qi spiral's action, Xiaoyan was so angry that he immediately started cursing, but just as the curse came out, he suddenly discovered that a layer of purple flame was slowly emerging around the surface of the purple chi spiral, following its high-speed rotation. The chi spiral's speed became faster and faster, and the purple flame became denser and denser. And at this moment, the heaven and earth energy scattered throughout various places in his body, finally randomly passed through some meridians, and rushed to the lower abdomen area. Then, overwhelmingly, it surged towards the chi spiral. His mind stared blankly at this surging heaven and earth energy. Xiaoyan groaned in his heart. If this energy, full of impurities, were allowed to rush into the chi spiral, then all the Dou Qi he had painstakingly cultivated until now would be completely destroyed. Just as Xiaoyan's mind despairingly watched the surging heaven and earth energy, it finally began to make contact with the chi spiral. However, an anomaly instantly occurred right when they touched the purple flame. The purple flame, which was originally stable, at this moment seemed to have its dignity provoked and burst out in anger. The purple flame stood up nearly half a meter high. The large mass of heaven and earth energy that was crowding forward rapidly shrunk in size after contacting the purple flame. In just an instant, the huge mass of heaven and earth energy was unexpectedly burned by the purple flame into drops of energy liquid, each only the size of a fingernail. After the purple flame burned away the energy impurities, it naturally seemed to possess intelligence, avoiding the pure energy liquid drop by drop, allowing them to shoot straight into the chi spiral. The pure energy liquid shot out and rapidly entered the rotating purple chi spiral, instantly creating waves of energy ripples. Under Xiaoyan's careful observation, he suddenly discovered that with each drop of energy liquid joining, the volume of the purple chi spiral was unexpectedly and slowly shrinking. The volume of the purple chi spiral became smaller and smaller, but Xiaoyan was not overly worried, because he could also perceive that although the chi spiral's current volume was shrinking, the Dou Qi contained within the chi spiral was becoming denser and denser. Sensing the increasingly dense Dou Qi within the chi spiral, Xiaoyan finally slowly let go of his frightened state of mind and quietly monitored the chi spiral's movements. After the first wave of heaven and earth energy was refined by the purple flame, the remaining heaven and earth energy did not dissipate because of it. Instead, due to the fierce suction force released by the chi spiral, surges of variegated heaven and earth energy poured down almost like water, ferociously heading straight into Xiaoyan's body. Facing the seemingly endless influx of energy, the purple chi spiral once again directly embraced everything, rejecting no one. However, as long as it entered the attack range of the purple flame, no matter what kind of energy, it would be fiercely refined by the purple flame into drops of pure energy. Within the chi spiral became stronger with each wave, so much so that even Yao Lao, observing from the outside, was slightly moved by this fierce suction force. Under the seemingly irrigating state of the heaven and earth energy, Xiaoyan suddenly discovered that the meridians and skeleton in his body were also becoming stronger and more resilient under this kind of purification. Since things had come to this point, Xiaoyan almost did not maintain any defense. Everything was completely left for the purple chi spiral to manage itself. Fortunately, this peculiar fellow did not actually cause trouble randomly, or else Xiaoyan would truly have brought disaster upon himself. His mind lingered inside his body, and Xiaoyan could clearly sense that his body was at this very moment becoming increasingly resilient due to the continuous cleansing of the heaven and earth energy. This state, akin to a sublimation, released so much pleasure that it almost made Xiaoyan moan out loud in comfort. In the cave, Yao Lao watched Xiaoyan's face reveal a delighted smile and a few parts of joyful comfort, and finally slowly breathed a sigh of relief. He shook his head with a smile. Judging from the situation, it seems that some other unknown and quite mystical factor had appeared within this little fellow's body, otherwise, he wouldn't reveal such a debauched expression. Of course, the current Xiaoyan naturally did not know that his comfortable expression had turned into a debauched one in Yao Lao's heart, because his mind was almost completely absorbed by the purple chi spiral spinning at an increasingly fast speed. You are reading the story at Thien Full www. Thien Full. After absorbing and accumulating an unknown amount of pure energy liquid, the purple chi spiral was now about the size of Xiaoyan's palm, unable to be fully grasped. However, the purple flame covering its exterior was becoming denser and denser, showing no signs of weakening. Under Xiaoyan's careful observation with his mind, Xiaoyan could vaguely discover that there seemed to be some kind of liquid form appearing faintly inside the chi spiral. After continuing the greedy absorption for a long time, the high-speed spinning purple chi spiral suddenly paused. The pause lasted only for an instant, then it began to spin rapidly in reverse. Looking at this suddenly reversed chi spiral, besides surprise, Xiaoyan could only pray in his heart that it absolutely would not do anything reckless. Perhaps Xiaoyan's prayer was heard in all directions by the reverse force. This energy liquid was thrown out by the purple chi spiral, scattering everywhere throughout his whole body, every single part. And after the energy liquid was injected and adhered to the meridians, bones, or flesh and blood, Xiaoyan discovered that this energy liquid was unexpectedly slowly integrating itself within. Phew! His mind let out an imaginary sigh of relief. Xiaoyan's heart surged with ecstasy. He could sense that, following the infiltration of this energy liquid, every part of his bones and flesh and blood was almost like undergoing a metamorphosis, gradually filling with power. The chi spiral continuously spun in reverse and scattered for over 10 minutes before slowly stopping. And as the chi spiral gradually stopped spinning, the fierce suction force from inside Xiaoyan's body also began to gradually weaken until it disappeared. Just a moment after the suction force vanished, Xiaoyan, who was sitting cross-legged in the cave, suddenly opened his eyes. In an instant, the clothes on his body and the black hair behind his back fluttered without wind, and a fierce aura awakened and erupted from within his body, several times stronger than it was a few hours ago. Sensing the aura emanating from Xiaoyan's body, Yao Lao smiled and said with a long laugh, "Congratulations to you. Starting from today, you are officially a Dou master." The clothes on his body billowed up, maintaining for a moment, then slowly pressed back onto Xiaoyan. Exhaling a mouthful of murky air from his body, Xiaoyan stood up, turned his head to look at Yao Lao who was smiling beside him, and also grinned. The joy on his face was hard to conceal. It had been a year. He had finally officially advanced from a Dou practitioner to a Dou master. Naturally, he didn't know how much sweat and effort he had put in to achieve the successful breaking of the cocoon today. Becoming a Dou master also meant that Xiaoyan had escaped the common tier. Although this Dou master tier was still only considered the bottom layer on the continent, it was undoubtedly much stronger and better compared to the Dou practitioner tier. Moreover, the most important thing was that Xiaoyan was still young, and had plenty of time to strive. Clenching his fist, an unprecedented feeling of abundant power. Recalling the battle with Mushi that day, Xiaoyan couldn't help but feel a bit of luck in his heart. If it hadn't been for Yao Lao teaching him the Earth Tier Dou skill at the time, no matter how hard he tried, he would have absolutely been unable to defeat Mushi, let alone kill him. Source of the story, Thien Full. Standing in place, Xiaoyan suddenly extended his right hand, then forcefully clenched it. Immediately, purple Dou Qi suddenly appeared outside his body. After appearing, the Dou Qi suddenly converged again. In the blink of an eye, it naturally slowly pressed against the outside of Xiaoyan's clothes, as if forming a layer of Dou Qi defense. And perhaps because Xiaoyan had consumed the purple flame, on this Dou Qi defense, one could vaguely see a little purple flame rising on the surface with the naked eye. Dou Qi armor is the signature move of a Dou master strong expert, and also the most practical skill. Recalling the time he fought with Mushi, Xiaoyan had witnessed its great effect. Although Xiaoyan could previously also summon Dou Qi armor, he could only locally cover a portion of his body. To completely cover himself like this was a bit impossible. Furthermore, the Douqi armor Xiao Yan previously summoned had absolutely no boosting effect on speed, defense, or attack. Only after becoming a Dou master does the summoned armor possess this kind of effect, which is the combat assistance function that every Dou practitioner yearns for immensely. Looking at the somewhat majestic and beautiful armor on his body with the purple flame, Xiao Yan's face was ecstatic. He forcefully and quickly threw several punches that tore the air. After being cleansed and strengthened by the heaven and earth energy earlier, now he, just relying on his physical strength, could actually make his fist emit a sharp, tearing sound. Watching Xiao Yan excitedly and continuously testing the power of a Dou master, Yao Lao smiled and shook his head. After he slowly calmed down, he tentatively asked, "See if the flame mantra has evolved. What tier is it? Intermediate tier or advanced tier?" Yao Lao's question made Xiao Yan quickly stop his swinging fist. He nodded, then slowly closed his eyes again, and immersed his mind back into his body. Immersing his mind into his body, he quickly reached the lower abdomen area, where the dantian was located. At this moment, the originally large faint yellow qi spiral here had been completely transformed into a purple qi spiral only about the size of Xiao Yan's palm. His mind gently swept over this small purple qi spiral, and Xiao Yan suddenly discovered that inside the qi spiral, there were more than 10 tiny purple liquid drops slowly flowing. These purple liquid drops moved inside the spinning qi spiral, just like several small fish in a lake. His curious mind infiltrated the purple qi spiral, and then quietly enveloped a tiny purple liquid drop. After sensing it for a moment, a wave of ecstasy slowly flashed in Xiao Yan's heart. He discovered that inside this tiny purple liquid drop, it unexpectedly contained extremely vast and robust energy. Having discovered the mystery of this purple liquid, Xiao Yan's heart now understood a little more clearly the huge difference between a Dou master and a Dou practitioner. He immediately let out a sigh of admiration. A Dou practitioner's qi spiral is like a balloon, and Dou qi is like ordinary air contained within. This kind of balloon has a limit. Once the inside is balloon bursting from being overinflated. The biggest advantage of advancing from a Dou practitioner to a Dou master is that the Dou qi inside the full balloon will undergo another transformation, turning into a drop of liquid Dou qi. A drop of liquid Dou qi is denser, more complex, and incomparably purer than pure Dou qi. And after the Dou qi is transformed, the quality and quantity of Dou qi contained inside the balloon instantly skyrocket. Because of this, a Dou master's capacity to store Dou qi naturally far exceeds that of a Dou practitioner. The difference in their Dou qi tiers is clearly distinct. His mind slowly withdrew from the qi spiral. Through the previous investigation, Xiao Yan could tell. Don't look down on the volume of that energy liquid, which is only about the size of a fingernail. But if it were to be converted, he would probably need a third of the Dou qi in his faint yellow qi spiral before becoming a Dou master to be able to convert it into such a small drop of energy liquid. From this, one can see how much energy is contained in this small drop. Staring at the slowly spinning qi spiral, Xiao Yan's mind moved slightly. A stream of purple Dou qi began to flow out from within, and then, following the circulation route of the flame mantra technique, began to powerfully surge up, following the individual stream of Dou qi flowing through the meridians. Xiao Yan could discover that the space around his body also began to seep out waves of fire attribute energy. Then, it penetrated Xiao Yan's skin, and finally entered the meridians, carried by the purple Dou qi, forming a perfect technique cycle. Completing a round of the technique cycle, Xiao Yan perceived that the current stream of Dou qi separated from the qi spiral was much more robust and abundant compared to a few minutes ago. After the Dou qi became robust and completed the cycle, it once again drilled back into the qi spiral. And just a moment after it entered the qi spiral, Xiao Yan's body slightly trembled, and he finally slowly opened his eyes. Looking at Yao Lao's expectant expression, he couldn't help but shrug his shoulders and said somewhat helplessly, Yellow tier intermediate. It only evolved one tier. Yellow tier intermediate. Haha, not unexpected. Hearing what Xiaoyan said, Yao Lao did not seem disappointed at all. Looking at the boy with a depressed expression in front of him, he couldn't help but laugh and say, "The evolution of a technique requires an extremely vast amount of heavenly flame energy. Your purple flame naturally does not have that condition. To be able to barely evolve the technique by one tier is already very good. Furthermore, relying on the uniqueness of the flame mantra, even though the technique is only yellow tier intermediate, it can already be considered comparable to other yellow tier advanced techniques, and not inferior. You should be satisfied with that." Hearing this, Xiaoyan could only smile bitterly and nod. Although he also knew it was highly unlikely, he still waited in his heart for a miracle to appear, making the technique directly jump to profound tier. Technique. Now it seems that the miracle is truly a bit illusory. Haha, heavenly flame. Just consuming the purple flame already caused me so much pain, yet the resulting effect is not extremely obvious. If I were to truly encounter a heavenly flame, it's hard to say who would consume whom. Shaking his head helplessly, although Xiaoyan had not personally experienced the power of a heavenly flame, whenever he watched Yao Lao concoct medicine, he could still vaguely perceive just how terrifying the cold-looking white flame truly was. Fiercely shaking his head, Xiaoyan discarded the hint of dejection that flashed in his heart. No matter what, the technique had indeed evolved, and he still had a very long time. Stepping forward from here step by step, he believed that one day he would be able to consume a true, heavenly flame, and evolve the flame mantra into the legendary heaven tier technique. Seeing Xiaoyan slowly recover from his dejection, Yao Lao smiled again and said, "Since you have now become a Dou master, then our cultivation in the magical beast mountain range should also end. Let's go. After all, living in the mountains and forests is truly annoying. We'll set off tomorrow morning." Yao Lao nodded, pondered for a moment and said, "Calculating the time, the deadline for the 3-year agreement at the Cloud Mist sect is already less than 8 months away." Hearing this, Xiaoyan's body stiffened. His gaze swept towards the night sky outside the cave. After a long while, he frowned and said, "I wonder what tier she has reached now. Haha. Don't worry. In the remaining time, although I can't let you become a great Dou master, advancing a few stars at the Dou master level is not too difficult," Yao Lao said indifferently. He paused slightly, then continued with a smile. "Furthermore, even if she truly increases her strength to a much higher tier than yours due to some unforeseen circumstances, you should still believe that this old man's few bones are not just for show. Within the Jiama Empire, there truly aren't many people who can make me pay attention, even Yun Yun, the sect master of the Cloud Mist sect, whose strength ranks among the top 3 experts in the Jiama Empire. Hee, I've never doubted Master's ability. I naturally believe what you say." Having been given a reassurance pill, Xiaoyan also felt much more at ease, and immediately said flatteringly with a smile. Giving a bloodless glance at Xiaoyan's flattering smile, Yao Lao waved his hand and said, "We'll leave the magical beast mountain range tomorrow. Our next stop is the border of the Jiama Empire, the Tiger Desert. Let me warn you first, the cultivation there will be far more arduous and dangerous than the magical beast mountain range. You'd better prepare yourself mentally. Tiger Desert. The place where my 2 elder brothers are, seems to be nearby. If I have free time, I can conveniently go and take a look." Grinning, Xiaoyan patted his chest, and said to Yao Lao, "As long as it allows me to quickly increase my strength without any long-term side effects. Halfway when the time comes, but even if you try to run away then, I will forcefully kick you back." Smiling sheepishly, Xiaoyan wisely remained silent. "All right, go back and rest." We'll set off tomorrow morning. Yao Lao was about to return to the ring, but his body suddenly paused. He pondered for a moment and said, I once went to the Tagar Desert years ago. Because I heard that deep within that great desert, a type of heavenly flame seemed to be hidden. Unfortunately, I did not manage to find it back then. If your luck is extremely good this time, perhaps you'll have a chance. Saying that, Yao Lao didn't even look at Xiaoyan's eyes, which had suddenly lit up brightly. His figure flickered and he disappeared into the ring. Heavenly flame. His fist clenched with some excitement. Xiaoyan turned and walked out of the cave. After personally experiencing the power of the purple flame, his desire for the heavenly flame had also become increasingly terrifying and strong. I must find it. In the cave, the boy's firm voice mixed with a trace of greed lingered and did not dissipate. Thank you for watching. If you found the story interesting and meaningful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel.